Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Let's call to order this hearing of the Assessment Appeals Board for October 10th, 2016. And we'll start by asking our clerk to call roll.
Board Member Crow.
Present.
Board Member Curtis.
Present.
Board Member Stern.
Present. Thanks. And now I'll ask that everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you do intend to provide testimony today, please remain standing so you can get sworn in after. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. And if you do intend to provide testimony today, please stand.
All right. I'll now place you under oath. When I complete reading your oath, please state I do. You do solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give and the matters now pending before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Okay, great. We'll go next to our agenda review, and for those who aren't with us often, this is a time where we can take care of several action items all with one motion, and so we'll ask Mr. Vlahakis, our clerk, to read those.
Item 5, Agenda Review for October 10th, 2016. The Clerk of the Board recommends approval of the Agenda Review by the Assessment Appeals Board. The Agenda Review consists of the following agenda items. Item 30, Application Number 15-10792. Applicant Elaine Weinstein Family Trust. Elaine Weinstein continued to December 12th, 2016, pending receipt of the original stipulation. Item Number 31, Application Number 15-10803. Applicant Maria Galindo, removed from the agenda due to the submission of a withdrawal. Item number 33, application number 15-10842. Applicant Occidental Land Partners LLC, Robert Hart, removed from the agenda due to submission of a withdrawal. Item number 34, application number 15-10843. Applicant 680 Evergreen LLC, Robert Hart, removed from the agenda due to the submission of a withdrawal. Item number 36, application number 15-10904. Applicant Liberty Property Limited Partnership, LPT, removed from the agenda due to the submission of a withdrawal. Item number 40, application number 15-11004, applicant Vala Properties, LLC, removed from the agenda due to submission of a withdrawal. You'll note that item on the agenda is a range. Only number 40 is withdrawn. 41 through 43 are active. Item number 50, application number 15-11282, applicant Chick-fil-A, Inc., removed from the agenda due to the submission of a withdrawal. And item 51, application number 15-11579, applicant Barton Spindler, continued to December 12th, 2016, pending receipt of original stipulation. And that completes the agenda review. Recommended action is to approve.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the board on the agenda review items? Okay, and I'll also just double check to see if anyone in the room is here to represent any of the items that were just read that will be removed from the agenda. Good morning.
Are there any other items not included on there? We got a very date.
Anything that you did not just hear will continue on the agenda. If you want to talk with our clerk for a second to confirm or check in.
Everything on the agenda review is approval or we're not denying anyone, so I think the board is okay to approve as stated. And we'll take care of that once we get to that applicant's item.
Okay, and didn't hear any questions, so looking for a motion to approve.
So moved. I'll second that motion.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Curtis and seconded by Mr. Crow. And are we, yes.
Should be able to vote.
And motion carries. And so, Mr. Vlahakis, I'll just ask the one gentleman who asked, I'm not sure if he checked in with you or if there's anything that you need to confirm.
I think it's best when the item gets called, we'll figure it out.
Let's see, we'll go next to public comments. This is a time for anyone to make a comment on an item not on the agenda today. Okay, hearing none. Next, we'll go to board comments. Any board comments? Okay. Next, item 8, adoption of the 2016 Conflict of Interest Code for Assessment Appeals Board, number 1.
Good morning, Chair Stern, members of the board. I'm Brian Palmer. I'm your Chief Deputy Clerk of the Board. And the
Morning.
item before you, good morning. The item before you is the adoption of your 2016 Conflict of Interest Code, specifically now for Assessment Appeals Board number 1. It's been modified to remove the positions related to now your new Assessment Appeals Board number 2 and treat your hearing officer as a separate entity as well. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, I believe we received these via email prior to the hearing, but want to
correct.
make sure, since we don't have a copy here with us, that if there are any questions or
I
comments
have no
from the board.
questions. I have no questions.
Okay. We don't have any questions. I guess
Great.
that's a good thing. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Okay. And so, Mr. Vlahakis, is there any special way you'd like to hear a motion made for
We
this?
just need a motion to approve.
Okay.
So moved. I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis and seconded by Mr. Crow. And motion carries. Thanks,
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Palmer. Good to see you.
Thank you for all the new technology also.
We'll do our best to keep up with it. Okay, next, item 9, application 14-11248. And before I go on, just for those in the audience, we'll go now through all the items on the agenda to determine the status of each, and then any hearings that'll go forward today, we'll come back to. So first, we'll just go through all the items. And again, number 9, application 14-11248, applicant is Baxter Healthcare Corp.
Good morning, board members. My name is Renee Daza, agent for the applicant, and I'm here requesting a continuance. We provided the assessor's office with a tour, I believe it was on last Monday, of the facility, and when subsequent to that, we provided them, I believe, on Wednesday with documents requested from that tour, such as lease documents and amendments and subleases.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Daza. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We'll go to the assessor's representatives for any comments.
Good morning, Brooke Hill, representing the assessor's office.
Morning.
The assessor agrees with Mr. Dazo's recap of the events. We did receive lease agreements and amendments on last Tuesday. We do need more time to review that data, and Mr. Daza, I would imagine, does as well, and that's the reason he's asking for the continuance this morning. It turns out both the assessor and the applicant were surprised to learn that a portion of the building in question is tenant occupied, and so there was some discovery that happened last Monday.
Okay, is there have you discussed a range of dates or a specific date for a continuance?
No.
Okay.
The assessor would suggest 12/12.
Okay.
December 12th is fine with me. To inform the board, this has been rescheduled 4 times previously. On the February 29th, 2016 hearing, the parties were notified that no further continuance requests should be requested, although it was not made a condition at that time. And then when it was rescheduled to today from April 25th, today's hearing date was added to the calendar specifically because of this case. So we do, caution continuing, and the clerk would request that there be a condition that no further continuances be granted on this case if it is continued, as there have been 4 already. December 12th is a date of Assessment Appeals Board number 2, if the board wishes to do that. Otherwise, this board does not meet again until March 6, 2017. It should be several months. So I'm not sure if this board specifically wants to hear this case, or if they're okay with giving it to Appeals Board number 2 on December 12th.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Vlahakis. First, I'll go to the applicant, Mr. Daza. Should the board move forward with a continuance, is December 12th an acceptable date?
At this time, I think, yes, it will be, and I hope we resolve it beforehand.
Okay. And now we'll go to any questions or comments from the board for either.
Did the assessor have any comments on December 12th?
December 12th is fine. I would just like to to note for the record that the assessor would be opposed to any condition of no future continuances, as in this instance. Things happen. Discovery happens. We have every intention on resolving it, hopefully prior to the next hearing date with Mr. Daza. He's always very professional and works with our office, wonderfully, but things happen. He might get sick, we might get sick. I don't know what could possibly happen, but the assessor would oppose that condition be put on any continuance.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Mr. Curtis?
Did the assessor have any preference for which board, Board 1, Board 2? You're good
No.
with either? Okay.
Good morning, board members. Christopher Horn and council. Christopher Horn for the assessor's office.
Morning.
It is the assessor's understanding we are not allowed to request a specific board 1 or 2. It's up to the clerk of the board and the boards themselves to designate where cases are going to be placed. So the assessor is going to walk away from that question.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? I would say if both parties are working toward a conclusion, that I would agree with the comments that we not make a condition that there be no more continuances allowed. Happy to hear anyone else. Ms. Porsche, did you have a comment?
That's a call within the board's latitude to make.
Although I understand the effort toward efficiency from the clerk's office.
I agree.
Okay, so then, unless there is action requested otherwise, we'll ask for a motion to continue to December 12th.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow. And motion carries.
Thank you, board members.
Thanks. Okay, that takes us to items 10 and 11, applications 14/11281 and 14/11282. Applicant is Megalic Group, CarMax.
Good morning. This
Morning.
is Jeff Counter from Ryan LLC. I'm an agent for the applicant. At this point, I'm requesting a continuance on these two agenda items. The assessor has requested costs of the property that we're working on. I've provided them. There are some discrepancies and some questions that need to be asked of the taxpayer, and my contacts at the taxpayer are out of town or just coming back into town today. So we need a little bit more time to hash out the questions and the discrepancies with the costs I've provided.
Okay, good morning. Can you tell us your name one more time?
Jeff Counter.
Counter. Okay, Mr. Counter. Any comments from the assessor?
Mr. Counter's comments regarding providing data is spot on. We received it, we've reviewed it, we've had communications with him since then. There have been questions that have been brought up that he needs to address directly to the applicant. It's not a call that he can make. We have no problem continuing this to a later date because we believe that conversation will help expedite which direction this is going to go.
Okay, thanks. And suggested continuance dates?
Recommended date for all remaining cases on the agenda is March 6, 2017, the next time this board meets.
Okay.
And just to clarify, Chairman Stern, items 10, 11, and 12 through 15 are all related. Did you call all of those items?
I just called 10 and 11.
Okay, so
we'll-
they're all, 12 through 15 are, for Megalic Group, are also related, so
Okay.
any action will cover those as well.
Okay, so we'll add items 12 through 15 to the motion. And are there any questions from the board? Okay, and then let's just go back with the date to Mr. Counter on behalf of the applicant is, was it
March
March
6th?
7th? March 6th. March 6th acceptable?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, and to the assessor?
We agree.
Okay, so then looking for a motion to continue to March 6th of 17.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow, and the motion carries.
We need one more vote.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, items 16 and 17, applications 14-12223 and 15-11378. Applicant is NIC 12 Simi Hills.
This is a request for approval of a large reduction stipulation. It was emailed to the board on Thursday, and the assessor's office can give you an overview of what you will be approving.
Okay.
I believe this is the one where there may have been,
Is this the one with the additional information that was sent yesterday?
No, that's the following agenda
Okay.
item.
Okay. Any information from the assessor that you'd like to share?
Sure, it actually might be helpful just to summarize both. They're both independent living facilities, retirement facilities that are large value reductions. There is additional documentation attached to the next agenda item that is very similar to what was used to determine the reduction necessary for the one in question right now is for Simi Hills. But basically, there is a large amount of intangible value that was included in the purchase price that is not taxable, and so the valuation and stipulation agreements reflect that.
Okay, and we did all receive, verify that we all received those via email prior to the hearing. And any questions, comments from the board?
I understand how you derived
Here's the
your
one that we're looking
cap
at.
rate for this, but I'm not sure I understand how you come up with the rental income you capitalize. Would you kind of explain that?
I believe it was based on the actual income that the property produces.
It was actually, these are rental properties, is that correct?
Yes.
Not the individuals, I mean to a one entity renting the total property.
It was the sum of all of the individual tenants' annual rent.
Okay, and then from that you abstracted, of course, cost and expenses, and then you come up with a net. Okay.
Exactly, right.
Kind of a different methodology of our appraisal is such as using a real estate investment trust concept.
It's different, but it's not unique for this property type. This property type is typically bought and sold by REITs. So our job as appraisers is to emulate the market, and what the market does is they buy and sell, and they determine the values, and they allocate the values based on this REIT method, so we've done the same to verify that the purchase price was in fact market value.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, so thanks, Ms. Hill. We'll look for a motion to approve this stipulation, items 16 and 17.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis and seconded by Mr. Crow, and motion carries. And we'll go next to items 18 through 20, applications 15-11756 and 15-11758. Applicant Ventanas Bonaventure LP. And again, same situation with a request for a large stipulation agreement. And we did receive it ahead of time. However, I have a copy here if anyone would like to review it, or if there are any questions or comments. Oops. It's this one. I gave you the wrong one. Yeah, I think this was actually,
So to the
A different
assessors,
one.
same methodology for this property too?
That's correct.
or did you want this one? Sorry. Okay. And Mr. Crowe, did you want to review this, the one that we're currently discussing? Okay.
Did you receive the revised memo for this property?
This is the one that we received via
Friday.
email Friday?
Correct.
So,
Yeah, I have the email printed if anybody wants to look at it.
are there any, we can take a minute to review it?
Is this methodology about value covered in one of the assessment appeals handbooks, assessors handbooks?
No, it's not. We have received many fee appraisals for various retirement facilities across the county that utilize this methodology. And it is accepted practice. It's just very specific to this property type, and it is not covered in the manual.
How do you calculate goodwill?
That's what the REAP method is for. And if I could, just one point of clarification on this property. For Ventus Bonaventure, we had some conflicting documentation as to what the sales price actually was. So we had originally enrolled one value. We later discovered that their 10K filing reported a sales price much higher of about $38 million. And then once we received all of the documentation, the purchase and sale agreement, and other documentation related to the property, we found that the $38 million was incorrect. That was just an allocation used for the 10K. So we were able to come to an agreement based on the actual sales price and making the deduction for the intangible, non-taxable business assets.
So you extracted out the goodwill?
Exactly.
Okay. So the correct purchase price is how much? Approximately.
It's approximately $23,500 for the real property.
Okay, and that was from the purchase contract? You got that from the purchase?
The purchase contract, there we go. The purchase contract included the goodwill amount. So the full number of 38 and change included tangible and intangible property. So the assessor is not allowed to put an intangible value on the roll. So we used the REAP method in order to extract that and came up with, I believe it was 23.5.
Gotcha. Okay. So on the purchase contract, though, showed 38.
38.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Crowe, any questions? Okay, if there aren't any other questions, then we'll ask for a motion. And this was for items 18 through 20.
To approve, so moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crowe, and motion carries. Okay, we'll go next to items 21 through 24, applications 14-12359 through 14-12362. Applicant is Polly Tainer, Inc.
Also related, Chairman, is item number 25 for the same applicant.
Okay. So we'll include items 21 through 25.
There was a stipulation submitted to the board this morning. I believe council has just reviewed it and passed it down.
Did it come back to us? Here it is. Okay, so, Mr. Crowe, I think we may have already looked at it, but we'll just take a minute to look again. Okay. Any comments or questions from the board?
None.
Okay, so then we'll look for a motion to approve items 21 through 25.
So moved.
I will second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow, and motion carries.
One more vote, please. Thank you.
Okay, next we have item 26. Application 14-12363. Applicant is Rolling Oaks Drive LLC. And looks like with this one, we have a request to vacate a stipulation and approve the corrected stipulation. I believe we did already receive the corrected stipulation, is that right?
Yes, the corrected stipulation as well as the original approved with a marking of the differences. I believe the only difference was the year, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And we received it ahead of time, but I do have it here. Either of the board members would like to review it.
Again, the recommended action is to vacate the stipulation approved on June 27th, 2016, and approve the corrected stipulation.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by, we'll give Mr. Curtis, do you need a second to review it, Mr. Curtis?
Sure.
Okay. We'll just put that on hold for 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Crow, seconded by Mr. Curtis, and motion carries. Okay, next item 27, application 14-12416. Applicant is Sarabia Family Trust, and this was continued from most recently June 27th.
Is anyone here for this item? This applicant sent, well, as you can see, it's been continued 3 times. The applicant sent me an email late last week requesting postponement because he was going to be on vacation. I responded and informed him that I couldn't for 2 reasons, because he'd already used his right to a one-time postponement and because it was less than the 21-day legal limit to request a postponement, in addition to it already being continued numerous times. I have a history here showing the applicant has arrived late to every single hearing, so I'm not sure if the board wants to trail this and deny it as the last item, or if you just want to deny due to lack of appearance. Now, he didn't respond to my email denying his postponement to indicate whether or not he would be here. I did try to follow up with him by phone call and didn't get an answer. So if he doesn't show up, the recommendation action is to deny due to lack of appearance. But like I said, he has a history of arriving late at his last 3 hearings, so you could trail it if the board wants to.
Okay, and Mr. Vlahakis, he did say he wouldn't be here, right?
He said he was going to be on vacation. He did not respond further to say if he was going to send a representative or not show up. So I don't have a specific answer to that question.
Okay, any comments from the board?
I think in consideration, we should trail it.
Okay. Mr. Curtis?
Sure.
Okay, so we will trail it, and this is item 27. We'll come back to it before the end of the agenda. So we'll keep that item unresolved for now. And next, we should be at item 28. Application 15-10152, applicant Jeffrey and Philippa Eith.
This, the assessor submitted a copy stipulation at the August 8th, 2016 hearing. It was continued to today, the next regular meeting of Appeals Board Number 1, to give the applicant the required 30 days to submit the original. No original has been received to date. I didn't print out a copy of the board rule. I apologize. I believe the rule is the assessor has to make 3 attempts to attain the original. So if the assessor has exhausted all their attempts, the request would be to approve the facsimile stipulation.
Okay, any questions from the board? Okay, so then probably looking for a motion to accept the facts stipulation.
Of course, is that acceptable facts stipulation?
The board has a policy that if the assessor makes 3 good faith attempts to get the signed ink original back and doesn't, that the board will approve fact stipulations. We haven't heard from the assessor specifically on this where they made the requisite 3 good faith attempts through various methods. The board can ask the assessor that, but the board does have the power to approve facsimile stipulations per their existing policy.
Let's just verify if we could with the assessor.
The assessor has made the attempts.
Okay.
If the board is so inclined and would like to know the specific dates, we would need to trail this and pull that information off our database. If they want to take the assessor's comments at face value, then they can proceed accordingly.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions from the board? We're probably okay without the verification. And so looking for a motion to approve the facts stipulation.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow, and the motion carries. Mr. Vlahakis, are they really still faxed, or are they just scanned in email?
Facsimile, I think, is the general, maybe respond to Ms.
Oh,
Porch.
I guess a
I think that's-
facsimile
it's-
could be an email, right?
Right.
Not
I think-
necessarily a fax machine. Just curious.
That term refers to all types, correct? Or do we not? Well,
I don't want to slow the process by asking.
In the context of the Assessment Appeals Board, we use that term to refer to
Anything that's
something
not an original.
Anything that's not an original. I do believe the assessor receives most of them by email.
Right.
They don't come to our office directly. They come to
Okay.
the assessor's office. We do have a microscope, and we do signature verification.
Understood.
And that's how we can tell what's original and what's not.
Okay, dumb question.
And, council's view would be if the board is satisfied that an email transmittal
are.
of a stipulation has the same weight that it would accord to a fax,
Right.
that it can accept that.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. I'm
Oh,
usually-
and by the way, the policy does say, I just picked that up, in paragraph 4, for purposes of this policy, reasonable efforts means at least 3 separate attempts by a combination of mail, email, telephone, or other means of communication to request the applicant furnish the stipulation with the original signature to the assessor. Facsimile of an applicant's original signature means an exact reproduction of the applicant's physical signature appearing on a document transmitted by fax, scan, email, or some other reliable means of copying and transmitting a document.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm usually the one trying to make us go faster, so I'm sorry for that. Okay. Did we,
That motion to approve
Okay.
passed. And
Thank
we can
you.
move on to the next.
okay, next item 29, application 15-10502. Applicant is Paul Porter.
This was a late stip submission, was part of the stack that, with the polytainer that was read to the board this morning. Recommendation, if the board agrees with the stip, is to approve it so we don't have to delay any refund processing.
Okay, and so this was a stipulation that we received?
Received this morning as part of the packet that you did not get last week.
Okay, and so I'll make sure we have a moment to,
Should be with the polytainer.
is this it?
That's it.
Okay, so I'll pass it around. You saw it, okay.
Small reduction.
Okay, any questions from the board? Okay, looking for a motion to approve the stipulation.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow, and motion carries. Should take us to item 32. Application 15-10818, applicant is Tony Holloway. Good morning. Could you please state your name for the record?
Tony Holloway.
Okay, good morning. And
Good morning.
are you prepared to go forward with your hearing today?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we'll go to any comments from the assessor?
Rick Denham with the Assessor's Office. I guess, was it Friday, Mr. Holloway?
Yes.
Yeah. I called several times and never heard from Mr. Holloway till this last Friday. It so happens that Friday was my day off. He has an appraisal on his property, and we would like to look at that ahead of time, and perhaps after the appraisal, this whole thing might not be necessary anyway, but I still physically don't have the appraisal in my hand.
I have appraisals here in my hand.
Yes. And,
Okay.
So I don't know what to call it, but in lieu of the fact that data just arrived basically for me at this moment, we'd like it to delay it to examine the data, and then if necessary, obviously, go on to a hearing. If not, settle a case without your very capable input.
Okay, so the assessor is requesting a continuance.
Or I think he's requesting to trail the item on this hearing date, or?
What am I doing?
We would like a continuance.
Okay.
If the applicant would be willing to share his data,
Yeah.
then we would
Understood.
like a continuance. March 6th, this will give enough time for exchange of information and respective thoughts on the information provided by the applicant.
Okay.
Yeah, I typically have contact with applicants at the residential level. Even if they don't give me anything, I typically tell them what I'm using as comparables. And so I would like him to have that advantage prior to hearing also.
Okay. And Mr. Holloway, are you okay with a continuance to March 6th?
I'll be okay with that.
Okay, and it sounds like the exchange of information might help the process. Any questions, comments from the board?
This seems like a case for the hearing officer. Is there a case, a date sooner than March?
The applicant requested the Assessment Appeals Board on their application, so let me see if he would be eligible. If you would prefer to switch to the one-person hearing officer, we do have a sooner date of January 31st, 2017 available. Your hearing would only be for one member rather than a three-panel board. Would you like to switch, or do you want to stay with the Assessment Appeals Board?
One person would be okay.
Okay, do you want to do January 31st?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so Mr. Vlahakis, would you like the board to move to accept an amendment to the application to using a hearing officer and continue to that date?
That would be perfect.
And did you say the date was January 31st?
January 31st, 2017.
Okay, so unless there are any questions from any of the parties, we'll look for a motion to both amend the application to accepting a hearing officer versus the full board, and also to continuing to that hearing officer's date on January 31st.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Crow, seconded by Mr. Curtis, and the motion carries. So hopefully we'll get everything taken care of. Thanks.
All right. Thanks very much.
One more vote. There we go.
Okay, we should be at item 35, I believe, next.
That's correct.
Okay, item 35, application 1510902. Applicant is Southern California, Nevada LLC.
No one has checked in for this item. The agent, Pivotal Tax Solutions, did inform me that they were not going to be present today because they had conflicting hearings in another county. So the recommendation would be to deny due to lack of appearance.
Okay. Any comments from the assessor?
No comments.
Council just has a comment that if the board chooses to deny for lack of appearance, that would be without prejudice to the agent making whatever application they wanted, if they wanted to later, to move for reconsideration, if the, to present the circumstances of the two competing hearings. That way the board can make an assessment later if there's, if in the board's determination there was good cause for missing
Okay.
this hearing.
Thank you.
I'll note, the agent did choose today as their date of hearing. They were given several options when they postponed, and they picked today, and then I guess later decided it didn't work. But, so they did have the option to choose today as their hearing.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay, so then looking for probably a motion to deny due to lack of appearance.
So moved.
I will second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow. And motion carries. Okay, next, item 37, application 15-10915. Applicant is Maria Oros. Good morning. Could you please state your name for the record?
Good morning. My name is Maria Aros.
Okay, good morning, Ms. Oros. Are you ready to move forward with your hearing today?
As best as I could, I think. I'm kind of confused about this whole process and stuff.
Okay.
But I'll do my best.
Okay, and let's hear any comments from the assessor.
The assessor is ready to move forward today. However, if the applicant is uncertain and needs clarification regarding something, regarding the process, I don't want to come off as forcing the hearing upon her. If she needs more time, I'm maybe if she could expand on her comments that she just made regarding not being.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Ms. Oros, would it be helpful to you to discuss maybe the matter more and continue to a future date, or would you like to
Well,
go ahead?
What I feel right now is that if we could resolve something today, that'd be fine. But if we can't, maybe we can continue. I feel like I'm confused about this situation and what actually occurred when I was talking to Rick, the assessor's person, because I was aware that he agreed with me that the amount that was given was a little too high, and then he changed his mind and said that he couldn't help me and that I needed to come to court. And I guess I didn't I wasn't given the opportunity to know why, what happened, where do you guys stand? Do you guys have anything to offer me to avoid all this that we're doing today? Because, I'm just a simple person that I don't understand the process. I don't know your terminology. I'm not an attorney, and I'm just trying to get some help. I presented some stuff to him, and I don't know what the thought was on that. There was a bankruptcy on the builders, and the fact that there was a lot can't even think of the word right now.
Well, let's see, before we get into the details of the case, is it possible to trail this and to have a conversation between any of the parties just to determine whether it's best to move forward today or continue, and then we could come back to it in a little while?
I would be happy to agree to that. We can trail it. Mr. Denham is in the back of the room, and they can have a subsequent conversation. Trailing this will possibly provide more light for the applicant on the assessor's position.
Okay.
And then at the end of the day, she can decide whether or not to proceed today or ask for a continuance. How does that, are you agreeable to that?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't we do that? We'll leave this item open. Again, come back to it before we're done today, and perhaps you could have a conversation with one of the assessor's representatives and understand the process a little bit better.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any comments, questions from the board?
Does Mr. Denham have time to talk to the applicant now? Sure. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Curtis. That was a good question. So then let's go next to item 38, application 1510920. Applicant is Andrea Thompson.
Good morning.
Hi. Could you please state your name for the record?
Andrea Thompson.
Great, welcome. And looks like we're continued from August. And are you prepared, Ms. Thompson, to move forward today?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And any comments from the assessor in terms of status?
The assessor is also ready to move forward today.
Okay. So then we will come back to this item once we get through the agenda, which shouldn't be too long.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, item 39, application 1510945. Applicant is Dave's Fuel Docks. It's continued from June. Welcome back. Good morning.
Good morning, board members. Samuel Sadov. I've spoken with representatives from the assessors. I got them paperwork. I did also get it late from the time because I've had some personal issues. I also gave the assessor some additional information by, I call them zip disk. I think they're called thumb drives now, but whatever, because it's a large volume and it's more searchable that way. I believe what we talked about is a continuance to March 6th, and hopefully we'll have this resolved before this. Part of this is somebody needs to tell us who owns the fuel tanks and therefore who's responsible for.
Understood. Okay. Any comments from the assessor?
Yes, Mr. Sadov is correct. He provided this documentation to us on September 29th, and then this morning came in with this. We have not had time to review, obviously, this, or the stack of paperwork that he's provided. So continuance to March 6th would be agreeable to us. I'm hoping that everything that he's provided to date is enough to remedy the situation.
Okay.
I would like to request, if I could, to meet with, for us to get together personally, because one of the things I provided it on the disc because of the fact that it's almost 700 pages long, and most of it's not germane, and it would be easier, since I've spent 5 years dealing with it, for me to help the assessor through the process as to what sections to go to.
Okay.
We would gratefully accept your input. You can get with the appraiser assigned, and we'll set up a date and time, and a space within the office, and you guys can just scroll through that document and pick out what's important.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the March 6th date, is that acceptable to both parties?
Yes.
Okay, any questions, comments from the board? Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to continue to March 6th, 17.
So moved.
I will second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow. And motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we have items 41 through 43 next. Is that correct? Okay. Applications 15-11004 through 007. Applicant is Vala Properties, LLC.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Tony Whitmarsh, agent for the applicant. We provided recently some information regarding Vala Properties, and I believe that the appraiser for the assessor's office needs us to get more information, and we're requesting a continuance so that we can comply with further discovery.
Okay. Morning, Mr. Whitmarsh. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Any comments from the assessor?
Mr. Whitmarsh is correct. There is more data that's been requested, and all we ask is that with the continuance to March 6th, which seems to be the hot day today, that we have a proviso that any additional data come in within 30 days from today.
And we'll work with the applicant we'll do our very best to comply by the 30 days
Okay.
with our applicant.
Okay. Any, I don't know if I already asked this, if there are any comments from the board? Questions?
Is this a continuance requested by the assessor?
No, it's a continuance requested by the applicant.
It is. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. And so then we'll look for a motion to continue to March 6th. Did we discuss the date? All of a sudden, I'm forgetting everything we've talked about.
I made comment about March 6th, and
Okay.
I didn't hear any objections by Mr. Whitmarsh.
I'm agreeable to the date.
Okay. And then,
Language in there too about the,
right, there's a requested condition of the applicant submitting any additional information within 30 days. Has the additional information already been requested, Mr. Horn? Just
There has been conversation between the assigned appraiser and Mr. Whitmarsh.
Okay.
If Mr. Whitmarsh would like it, a more formal request in email, we can set that up as well.
And I've already arranged for that. It's just,
Okay.
We don't have any control over the quantity or quality of the information we get from the applicant, so.
Understood. Okay. So looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, moved by Mr. Crowe, seconded by Mr. Curtis, and the motion carries.
Great, thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next item 44, application 1511061. Applicant is Christopher Hicks.
A stipulation was submitted, I believe it's with the materials that were submitted this morning for review. So the recommendation is to approve this stipulation.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we've all seen it. I don't recall that specific one, but I'm sure it's here. Here it is. Okay, I'll just make sure we all have seen it. Okay, if there aren't any questions or comments, then we'll ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, moved by Mr. Crowe, seconded by Mr. Curtis. Motion carries. And we'll go next to item 45.
You can go ahead and start.
Okay, application 1511076. Applicant is John, and I'll spell the last name Adamczzyk.
My office received a call this morning from this applicant that was relayed to me that he was not going to be able to make it to his hearing this morning, and he was informed he would be denied due to lack of appearance, and he was okay with that. So the recommendation is to deny due to lack of appearance.
Okay, any comments from the assessor?
No comments.
Okay.
What was the reasoning for not?
It was relayed to me. I believe he just couldn't make a hearing work with his schedule. I'm not exactly sure.
Wasn't illness or anything like that?
It was no emergency situation that would qualify. It was previously postponed, and he chose today as the day of the hearing. So, I don't know exactly, but he didn't seem to have an issue when he was told that he'd be denied due to lack of appearance.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, then we'll look for a motion to deny for lack of appearance unless there's other action.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Crowe, seconded by Mr. Curtis, and motion carries. And we'll go next to items 46 through 48. Applications 15-11182 through 84. Applicant is Oak View Plaza LLC. Morning.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Good, how are you? Could you state your name for the record, please?
Hakeem Barakat.
Okay, Mr. Barakat, are you prepared to move forward today?
No, sir. I
Okay.
would like to see if I can continue this matter into a later date.
Okay.
Because I do have, some information that I don't have on my hand.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the assessor?
The assessor has no problem agreeing to the applicant's request to continue this. To date, we had not received any documentation. Based on this gentleman's comments, apparently he has information in hand that he would like to share with us, and we'd be happy to take it. All we want is a proviso that after reviewing this documentation, should there be anything else that needs to be supplied, it's done so within 30 days from today.
Okay, and before we get back to the applicant, Mr. Horn, is it, for that condition on a motion, would it work for it to be 30 days before a hearing date, or just realizing that it's possible that you haven't formalized what additional information you might request, and so if that's at a later date, 30 days wouldn't be 30 days?
Our appraisers are good, okay? They can go through the documentation and compare it to what is on our 441D request relatively quick. And not only that, 30 days from today keeps it in everybody's mind.
Okay. Great. And back to the applicant. Let's see, you requested the continuance, and you do have information you're ready to share with
I don't
the...
have it right at this moment, with me now, but I do have some information that I haven't been able to get, but if I can continue it, on a later date, because I might not have it, on hand on 30 days.
Okay.
If it's been on a later date, so.
Got it. And any comments or questions from the board?
The recommended date for continuance is March 6, 2017.
Okay. Does March 6th work?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And assessor, March 6th?
The assessor has no problem with March 6th.
Okay. So unless there are any other comments, we'll look for a motion to continue to March 6th of 17 with a condition that information requested by the assessor be submitted within 30 days.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crowe, and the motion carries. And Mr. Barakat, we'll see you March 6th.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, item
Sir.
4.
Sorry.
Mr. Barakat, I think the assessor, Mr. Horn, has a question for you.
Are you providing documentation to us now, today?
No, not today.
Okay, again, 30 days was a good call on our part. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, moving forward, we are at item 49, I believe.
That's correct.
Application 15-11233. Applicant is Bolt Enterprises, LLC.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Ed Shillo.
Hi, Mr.
Good morning.
Shillo.
I'm here to ask for a continuance because I still need to provide information to the assessor.
Okay.
A
Any
30-day limit is good with me as well.
Okay. Any comments from the assessor?
The assessor agrees with the 30 days, the continuance being asked by the applicant, and March 6th.
Okay. Any questions, comments from the board? And Mr. Shillo, is March 6th acceptable date for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so we'll look for a motion then to the same effect as the last with condition that information be submitted within 30 days that's requested from the assessor, and continuing to March 6th.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow, and motion carries.
Thank
Thanks.
you very much.
Okay. March 6th is getting busier.
That does complete the regular agenda. We have 2 trailed items and
Mhm.
1 item
Right.
set for hearing. I would recommend we go to 27 first.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Vlahakis. So we had trailed item 27. This is application 14-12416. Applicant is Sarabia Family Trust. We're waiting to see if a representative was here, so I'll ask if we have any representatives from the Sarabia Family Trust here. And doesn't sound like it. We'll probably look for a motion to deny due to lack of appearance.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow, and motion carries. We had also trailed item 37, application 15-10915, and I'll slow down a little bit, Mr. Vlahakis.
I'm good.
Okay. And this was Maria Aros?
She definitely wants to go forward, and that's the best path for her.
Okay.
And I did give her all of my comparables, and there was a little bit of confusion because we had reduced the price a little bit.
Mhm.
And so that was, and she, I don't want to say this because they're going to make me work Fridays, but she did come in Friday and I wasn't there. And in fairness, I put that on my answering machine, so I try to cover myself. But
okay.
Anyway, so I apologize. But after we both discussed it, I said it would be very in her best interest for the board to hear her case.
Okay, so Ms. Aros, are you interested in moving forward today, just to verify?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd recommend this be the second hearing after Ms. Thompson's hearing.
Okay. Could you just clarify why you'd like to do that?
Just since it seems like there's just general confusion about the process, I figured an example hearing would be first.
That might be a good idea. Thanks, Mr. Vlahakis. Okay, so yet again, I'll tell you that we'll come right back to you, okay, Ms. Aros? So we'll hear the one or other hearing before you, and then we'll come to yours? Okay, thank you. Okay, so then we do have one other open item, and that's item 38, application 15-10920. Applicant is Andrea Thompson.
And there was some, the gentleman in the back, were you here for a hearing? Can you come forward to the podium?
Item 65 was included in the stipulations.
65, 66, for Moore, MT Moore LLC.
MT Moore, okay. That's- Yes, okay. Apologize for having you wait. This is on the board's stipulation approval agreement, meaning you've already signed a settlement on the case with the assessor's office. So your appearance is not required here today. The board will consider that at the end of their meeting today and determine whether or not to approve the agreement.
Okay.
So is there a specific reason you came today?
I'd like to weigh in on this. I believe you spoke with Ms. Rovtar?
Yes.
And handled the situation through her?
Yes.
And you inquired whether or not it was mandatory for you to show up?
Yes.
And she said, no, it wasn't mandatory for her to show up. And you wanted to make yourself available, and forgive me for speaking on your behalf, but I interpreted it as you were wanting to make yourself available to the board should they have any questions regarding the stipulation that was signed.
Yes, yes. And
Okay.
the other question, just one other question, was that there was a, this was applying for just 1 year appeal, but we were curious as to, it doesn't go back, can't go back past 3 years, right?
Correct. It's not, it's a perspective base year appeal.
And there's no way to go back to contest the prior years because of the time frame?
Correct.
Okay. There's no other mechanism for that?
No, there's no other mechanism in place to trigger that.
Okay. So us being here wouldn't have any effect on the decision?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
So to summarize, it's a stipulation agreement that was already agreed upon by both parties and executed?
Right, and we're just waiting on the board's
Our
approval of it.
Would the board like to go to the stipulations right now since they're here?
It's fine. Just, it would only take a minute. If you'd like to stay, we'll go through that process and then see where we are. So having said that, the stipulations, item 52 on the agenda includes stipulations for items 53 through 105, and the board did receive those stipulations ahead of time and had time to review. Are there any questions or comments on the stipulations? Okay, so then we'll look for a motion to approve items 53 through 105.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow, and motion carries. And so included in that group of approvals was your stipulation, so that's
And the
been...
result will be mailed out, right?
Yes, in about a week, I will mail a signed copy with a letter that indicates it's been approved. The board has done so on the record. We need one more vote.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so before we get to Ms. Thompson's item, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Okay, we're now hearing item 38. We're back in session at 10:46. Application 15-10920. Applicant is Andrea Thompson. Welcome. We'll try to make sure we can see you clearly through all the computer monitors.
Good morning.
Good morning. And it looks like we are considering a...
It's a, I can recap it for you. It's a
Single-
residential, correct.
owner-occupied single-family residence. And if we could get a quick overview of the case from the assessor, we'll then go forward with the hearing. And then if you could also just establish, Mr. Horn, in terms of burden of proof, where you think we are, we'll go forward from there.
Chairman Stern, if we could also just confirm, the application says findings of fact are not requested, and I just want to
Right.
confirm that that is in fact the current state.
Okay, so Ms. Thompson, findings of fact would be a more formal summary of today's hearing prepared by the county council should you want to move forward with an appeal to Superior Court, I think is the most often used forum for those, and you said you did not require that, and so just wanted to verify that that's the case.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. So we'll just hear a quick summary first from the assessor of what we're considering.
As previously pointed out, this is a single-family residence. It is owner-occupied. It is a decline in value appeal as of January 1, 2015. The application number is 15-10920. And the assessor is ready to move forward as the burden of proof rests with him.
Okay. And so the way we'll proceed through the hearing is that we'll first hear a presentation from the assessor, and then Ms. Thompson, you and the board will have opportunity to ask questions about their presentation. Then we'll hear your presentation and go through the process with questions with the other two parties. There will then be closing summaries, which will start with you and end with the assessor. So go ahead, Mr. Horn, whenever you're ready.
Hi, Rick Denham, Ventura County Assessor's Office. There are...
Hang on for a second.
Hold on.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
let the clerk of the board finish passing out.
Oh, I thought you guys already had them.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's a couple of numbers, so I don't want you to become confused. If you would go to page 1, and that looks like Assessor's Exhibit 1A, it looks like this, Ms. Stewart, that page. Thompson, I'm sorry. Am I on the wrong one? Yeah. The base year value, the Prop 13 value is $2,543,456. The roll value for that year is $2,169,000, and that is also going to be our recommended value. Our actual appraisal is a little higher than $2,169,000, but we're going to go with that value. So I just didn't want anybody to confuse that. Our recommended value is $2,169,000. At the time of the application, the applicant's value was $1,943,760. Okay. If we would turn the page to the comp page, and once again, Ms. Thompson, that looks like this. I used 3 comparable sales. They all happen to be on the subject street by chance. Sale number 1 is very much like the subject, but it is slightly inferior by size, but definitely superior by location and view on the street. And that was adjusted for when you see that view adjustment down there for $100,000. Comps 2 and 3 are new homes, new in the sense that they were built in, I think it was 2013, but they didn't sell till late 2014 and 2015 and then become occupied. And so we adjusted for new. We also adjusted for age. And that's why you see those adjustments there. The 2 homes are extremely close to the subject, and they also are slightly different in the sense that they're lakefront, but there's a road in front of them, whereas the subject is lakefront, and you'll see that on the next page. On the next page is a map of the subjects. As you see, comps 2 and 3 are fairly close by. Comps 1 is further away. They're all on Lake Sherwood, and those were the 3 comps utilized by the assessor's office, and obviously the adjustments and the values speak for themselves. The sale prices on those 3 comps, I should point out, were a low of 2.585 and a high of 3.795. Thank you.
Okay, any other information, Mr. Denham?
Not at this time.
Okay, so Ms. Thompson, this is a time for you to ask any questions you might have based on the presentation that the assessor just made, and then, of course, you'll be able to make your own presentation after we're done with questions. So this is just a time for questions, if you have them.
All right, Mr. Denham, with respect to the first home that you mentioned, do you have any information regarding the remodeling and the condition of the interior of the home?
From the MLS, it made positive comments. Within the assessor's office, it was labeled average for the area from the consumer. The buyer does that, they tell us. And so that's the only information we have.
All right, so you didn't take into consideration, assuming that were the case, that the interior had been completely remodeled and was in near new condition?
Do you know when it was remodeled?
Well, shortly before the sale, within the year or 2 before the sale.
Year or 2? Yeah, we were, the realtor noted, it was in sellable condition, and the usual. Lake Sherwood tends to have everything kind of beautiful, and so it was sort of a typical listing is all we were able to observe. And then, once again, the owner has a chance to comment if there's anything beyond normal. In this case, they chose to call it average for the area. So that's what we have.
All right. And then with respect to the, you did mention the view with respect to property number 1. However, with respect to properties numbers 2 and 3, you actually noted that based on the location of Lake Sherwood Drive there, that I don't know if you actually deducted for that, but that it was somewhat of an inferior position on the lake relative to the subject property? Is that your
There's kind of an
view?
offset. Being on the lake and not having the road in front of you is, like in the case of your home, is an advantage. As far as their views, they're somewhat low, like your house is. They do not set up very high. And so in terms of, they're not high on a hill, higher on a grade. And so that's
All right.
kind of where we left it.
All right, but I guess my question is with respect to the view looking out from the front of the subject properties, or I'm sorry, the comparable properties 2 and 3, did you take into consideration that they are at a location where the entire open portion of the lake is visible as opposed to the subject home, which is on the cove?
Once again, we sort of offset that by the road versus, we don't entirely agree with you that it's got it actually has, like yourself, a little bit, not as limited as yours, but a limited view of the lake as opposed to comp number 1, which has more of a complete view of the lake. And so once again, that was offset in our mind because your house and comp 1 are actually on the lake. Comps 2 and 3, although on the road and certainly have a look-see, are not exactly on the lake. And there's a little bit of that was offset by the little bit of a view that it might have had over yours.
All right, and then with respect to the lake itself, did you take into account the quality and condition of the lake on January 1st, 2015 in any of your calculations?
That's sort of built into the market because if you'll observe our comps, they're nicely, most of them, I think the farthest one out was, what's that? Like 65 days. But there were comps prior to January 1st, 2015, and comps that closed after January 1st, 2015. And they would have reflected the condition of the lake in the comparables because that affects the entire neighborhood, not just your home in particular.
All right, so you didn't take into account anything that might have been unusual with respect to the subject property in terms of the condition of the lake. You viewed that the lake, the value of the homes on the lake would equally reflect any reduced quality of the lake. In other words, there wouldn't be any difference between properties at different points along the lake. Is that a fair statement?
Let me put it in my own language, if I could.
Yes.
The marketplace of Lake Sherwood and these 3 particular homes are affected by the lake similarly. And that is reflected in the market prices that these 3 buyers decided to pay for these properties at this particular time. And that included the condition of the lake at that time.
All right, so I guess what I'm saying is that this is my question. You didn't take into account any type of condition that was different in front of the subject home specifically as opposed to the overall condition of the lake at that time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right.
The lake affects every home.
All right. And did you take into account in your appraisal, or do you take into account in your appraisal whether the other homes are built by the same builder, thus have similar amenities?
Lake Sherwood is unique in a sense. They're all individually custom homes sometimes at the end of the day because of the price range. But they're also all similar because they have certain building standards. That's caught up in what we call quality class. These are all in the 9 quality class, meaning in the case of the 2 newer ones, we thought they were 9.5s. That means possibly a little bit better. but not necessarily visually possible for a buyer to notice it. And that could be in the form of extra copper plumbing, better earthquake safety, another couple inches on the foundation, those kinds of items. And so we traditionally, and we found the marketplace traditionally, has a hard time noticing between like 9 and 9.5. If your house was an 8 or your house was a 11 or one of the comps were, we would adjust, but that didn't occur. And these are, the classes are builder driven in this sense, that give us a lot of information. We kind of match it up with what it's supposed to be. And when it matches one best, that's why we apply it. So in this case, that's accounted for under quality class, to answer your question.
All right, thank you. With respect to the tract that the subject home is located in, referred to as Lakeside, were any of the homes that you considered, these 3 comparables, part of the Lakeside tract?
We do neighborhood classifications. If you'll notice, the second column below, the APN stands for Assessor's Parcel Number. And if you'll notice the second column, it has Market, District, Neighborhood. Those are pretty extensively looked at. In fact, I would compliment the assessor's office, because as an outsider who's now an insider, it's unbelievable how much work they did to get those neighborhoods right. And so if you'll notice, all of the comps used in yours are all from the same market area, district, and neighborhood. And that would be a conclusion of a long history of buyers thinking and telling us this is what the neighborhood is. And that's how those were established. That wasn't driven by the assessor's office. It was driven by the market and then eventually incorporated into the assessor's office.
All right, but there is a specific tract there of, I believe, approximately 14 homes that were built by Sherwood Construction right along the cove of the lake there. And the tract is lakeside. So I understand what you're saying, but my question is that, do you know if any of the homes that you considered were in fact part of that lakeside tract?
Just a second. All comparables are outside the what section? Yeah. The short answer is no, but also all the comparables are outside of the gated section of the lake, and that's really the common area, because inside the gated section, we call that a different neighborhood, even though sometimes the prices cross.
All right. And in your, I know you, I believe you indicated that you like to look within a period of approximately, is it 90 days before and after the January 1st date approximately, is that correct?
No, not entirely.
All right.
What I do each and every time is I look at available data. We look up to March 31st, 2015 of every calendar year, except leap years. We go to March 30th. And then we look 6 months ahead. When we run that 9-month spread, if we discover data, we then get pickier. In my case, I don't look for data. Data has to find me. I don't pick these out for any reason. They pick me out. So I found 3 comparable sales on the subject street, all selling from the oldest one is October of 2014, and the other outlier is February of 2015. To be honest with you, it's a very tight group of comparables. There could be a great comp from April of 15. I probably wouldn't use it simply because it's older, okay? And that's why I took these. They were the nearest, and they were what they were. I didn't pick them, they picked me.
All right. Now, I don't know if you can answer this question, but in that area, generally, when you're looking at January of 15 going forward, do you know if the general market, neighborhood market is was moving up or was moving up at that time going forward, say, let's go talk about the next year. In other words, if you're looking at January 15 and then you're looking forward another 6 to 9 months or even the next year's valuation, do your figures show that the market is in an upswing at that point?
To answer your question, I have to go and put myself into the year this took place. I definitely know what's happening in 2016. I definitely saw what happened in 2014. But I have to isolate myself because it's a point in time. And that's what I did. And that's why I was lucky in this sense. The comps isolated me, and that was it. That's what they were on that day.
All right, I understand. In your review, though, you said that you're not, although that's what you initially look for, my question is whether or not you were able to, or did you consider a home located at 230 Lake Sherwood Drive, approximately, actually perhaps even a little closer than numbers 2 and 3 that sold on May 7th of 2015? Was that something that you took into consideration in your valuation?
No, that home sold on 5/7/15. I am not allowed to consider that home.
All right. All right. Very well.
Sorry to interrupt, but just for the sake of clarification, Mr. Denham, could you just clarify for the applicant the parameter, again, that you are?
Exactly. What happens in our case is I stop looking at data after March 31st. And believe me, I've had that April 1st sale, and it's perfect. It clarifies everything, and I can't use it.
All right, I understand.
So that's why I wouldn't have looked to a May of 15 sale.
I understand.
That is considered for 2016, however.
All right. Let me just ask you one. I think this is my last question, unless I think of something else, and I appreciate your testimony. With respect to the photograph that you've attached to the appraisal, do you have the date when this aerial photograph was taken? If you know.
We do not have the exact date. The flyover would have been done approximately the first part of January 2015.
All right, so this is a specific photograph taken by the assessor's office for purposes of appraisals?
It's a specific photograph taken by the county. It's part of the GIS. It's a GIS photo.
All right, but you're certain that this was taken in January of 15?
The flyover is usually done either at the first part of a year or the latter part of the preceding year. So could it have been December of 2014? Absolutely.
What are the outside perimeters with respect to this photograph, if you know?
Please clarify.
How early could it have been taken and how late could it have been taken?
As I am not involved with the flyover, I can't give you the specific dates of when it's agreed upon they're going to do a flyover. I'm just saying historically.
All right, thank you. All right, I don't have anything further.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board to the assessor?
Looking at your comp sheets and your adjustments and everything, it looks like your valuation supports the factored base year value. How come it's your recommended is about 500,000 less?
The comparables that may have been used for the initial valuation that established the roll value may not have included some of the comps that we used due to the fact that like comp number 3 may not have been come on and notified may not have been come on the I guess, the roll work that needed to be processed. Sometimes sales come on late for whatever reason, and when the when the appraiser established the roll value of 2.19 or 2.169, it may not have been with the same comparables or the same adjustments. We didn't look at the initial appraisal to compare that one and then try to fit a number in. We worked independently of that appraisal.
Okay. Any other questions?
So location-wise, what's the difference between the subject? You made a location adjustment between comp number 1 and the subject?
I made a view adjustment. It has a superior view, clearly, when I drove it. And it's on the lake.
Sure. So is that kind of meaning a location adjustment also?
Yeah, you can imply that in it. It's a lot of factors, though. It just, I happen to be able to kind of get in their driveway, so to speak, in a friendly way, and so I kind of got a good peek of view of their view. And
so in other words, if the subject was where comp 1 is,
it's a better it's a better view, absolutely.
by $100,000.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. The comments from the applicant talking about the quality of the lake. So generally, if the quality of this lake or any other lake where a property is fronting goes down, what I think I heard you say was that would show in the market data, correct?
It's a number. It could be one of the factors. That's why the comparables used by the assessor's office, because of their timing, account for that.
Sure. So in other words, if the lake dried up.
So if next year in 2016 the lake dried up, or something else happened, prices would change. Or it could be also, to be honest with you, at this price range, at the $2 million and up range, it's not the same curve as the rest of the market. So some years go like this and go down and go. Whereas the 500, like the 400 to 500 to 600, sort of been an uphill arc.
Sure.
These do not. The $2 million homes, I have found from year to year go up and down. So I get myself in 2015, and I say that's what they did. And then in 2016, I would have to look at that data and then comment. I haven't looked at enough data in 2016 to comment. That's why
Sure.
I wasn't evasive. But I get into a couple things that maybe you've learned about us. Sometimes we don't look at a prior appraisal because one of the things we're instructed with is we want a different pair of eyes looking at it without prejudice, so to speak. And so that's sort of my function. And so I look at it, and also the comps available to me are 100% because I'm doing it historically. I have a tremendous advantage to a line appraiser. I'm looking at it historically. They're trying to, meet that it's about June 15th deadline that y'all expect us to close the roll. So I'm under a different kind of pressure that's probably less. Plus I have history.
Okay.
Thank you.
Actually, I forgot my question, so that's.
I was successful then.
Any other questions, Mr. Kurtz? Okay, a couple of quick questions from me. Obviously, the drought is something that affects a lot of lakes, and the lien date is January 15, correct? And so that's
correct.
I don't know specifically what Lake Sherwood looked like at that time, but I know that every other lake was probably at whatever its lowest point has been in a long time, but maybe it doesn't affect there. So could you give us, or me, a little specific info on the lien date as it applies to the subject property, which is in the back of a cove?
Yeah.
Was there less lake in front of the house than there is most of the time?
Well, we don't have a day-by-day picture. And
This is something that I think dramatically affects property value on a lien date, and so would be very important in determining what it would sell for on that day, if there was a lake there or not.
It can, but once again, all of the comparables that you're looking at are affected by your concern. So the person that decided to buy comp number 2 for $3.2 million was affected by the way the look of the lake that day.
But my specific question would be, the subject is at the very back of a cove. None of the other comps are, and so I could understand comps 2 and 3 having plenty of water in front of them when conceivably the subject maybe could have 0 because it's at the, but maybe I'm wrong. So that's why I'm asking.
I got you.
Okay. With regards to a cove, yes. I would agree with you that the lake would probably be at a lower level, or, sorry, let me rephrase that. The level's the level. Now, how far it may have receded from down the bank may give an appearance of being a little bit lower because you just don't know. I don't know how lake level is, what normal lake level is for comp number 1, and if the subject is possibly a little bit higher. Would we agree that a cove is going to be possibly more problematic? Yes. Yes, we would.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Any other questions from the board?
So real quick, I've asked this before. As far as how much weight you would give the comparables, you would give all 3 comparables equal weight as far as determining the value?
I like comps 2 and 3 because they're physically close. I like comp number 1 because it's actually a lakefront. No, to be honest with you, drought or otherwise, lakefront's lakefront. Most people buy, even if there is a perceived problem, with the idea that someday that problem's going to go away. To be honest with you, at the Lake Sherwood level, I think the problem's going to go away one way or the other someday too. That would be a normal expectation.
And all 3 comps have docks?
I believe so.
Okay, and you only have 3 comps, so I'm assuming you couldn't find any other comparable properties that were in the non-gated section of Lake Sherwood that fronted?
It's a little bit unique going non-gated. You can tell by our prices, and don't take this as an insult, but inside the gate they're even more expensive sometimes and don't even have the lake. So it's a different world, and so I have never had the occasion to use gated and non-gated, and in this occasion I did not once again. And finding all the comps on the subject street takes care of a lot of issues because the actual street, Lake Sherwood, kind of sells a little better than the other streets in the non-gated area, for the most part.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So then we'll go next to the applicant's presentation.
Good morning.
And just give us 1 second until everyone gets the information. And whenever you're ready.
All right, very good, thank you. The reason that I'm here today is that, in my view, the valuation that was reached on January 1st, 15 for our taxes that year was not accurate, and moreover, not so much that the value wasn't accurate, but I am very concerned about what was taken into consideration in reaching the value. I certainly understand and respect Mr. Denham's role and job in terms of assessing properties. I do realize that the assessor cannot in every situation go out and personally inspect a home or necessarily be expected to understand very unusual and unique situations that occur at a particular property, but I guess then that's why we have the hearing process. So I just want that to be understood. I think it would be helpful after I've heard the questions from the board and also some of the questions I've had in the comments of Mr. Denham to perhaps understand just a little bit about the history of the area of Lake Sherwood that is directly behind my home in particular. If you look on the map that the assessor provided and you see this little line across there before the cove, that area that is blocked out there is also referred to, I believe, as Parcel B. At least the developer or someone refers to it as that. And what Parcel B is, if you see where the line is, that line, and I just want to make sure, does everyone understand what I'm talking about? If you look at the line that is across the lake at the very bottom of the photograph, can you see that? In other words,
Is this, Ms. Thompson, is this the line that goes across the cove?
Yes, just after my home, where it
Okay.
goes, I guess on the photograph, it's up and down across the cove. All right, that location right there where the line goes across, that is originally where the lake ended, all right? And with respect to the area that's known as Parcel B, that's also referred to sometimes by the developer as China Flats. I happen to have lived in 3 homes in this area, and so I've lived there the entire time prior to the development of the home that I now live in. And that area there was not part of the original lake. It was basically weeds and sort of a meadow, and then at the very end there's some drain culverts that where the water comes into the lake, but it was not, and I believe those were there at that time, but it was not filled with water at all. It was a dry area. And so what was done in order to develop this lakeside development was the area was dredged out or dug out in some manner by Sherwood Construction. And initially, when water levels were higher, I believe it was those homes were completed around 2001, 2002, there was a fair amount of water in there. However, having said that, this area never had the depth of the rest of the lake. And I think if you would take a moment to look at the photographs that I've attached, and I'll go over them briefly so everyone understands what they are, but hopefully you can see that. It is and was a very shallow portion of the lake. Obviously, the current situation has been exacerbated by the drought, but the other thing is, since this was not a natural part of the lake originally, well, it's all not natural because it's dammed, but nonetheless, this was not part of the area that initially filled with water when the area was dammed. And so as it was dug out, it was not as deep as the rest of the lake. So I just want that to be understood and taken into consideration. And so what we have here is a situation where my particular home has a very unique and currently unfortunate situation in that that area has been more significantly impacted than any other area of the lake based on the drought. Specifically, while I understand the assessor's viewpoint that the overall condition of the lake will be reflected in the market, I strongly disagree with that with respect to my particular home. The area where my home is located is a completely different, in a completely different condition now and was on January 1st, 15 than the homes in 1, 2, and 3. It is correct that the lake is certainly much lower, but all of the portions of the lake that affect number 1, 2, and 3, they're in front of completely navigable areas of the lake, which is not the case with respect to where my home is located. And I want to, well, I think there's a couple of things that establish that. Well, let me just go into my general, if I could, just take a moment to go into my general arguments regarding my concerns about the appraisal. My overriding concern has to do with the lake condition. I also quarrel with the fact that the appraisal that year in January was based on only those 3 homes. Specifically, the homes numbers 2 and 3 were homes that were completely atypical for that area based on their quality of construction and the prices that they garnered. They were not evidence of simply an increasing overall market, but they were unique to those 2 properties. And even though I understand it's outside of the time frame that Mr. Denham, wishes to consider, these homes are not part of the lakeside development where my home is. My home is a tract home. There is a tract there called Lakeside, and it is fairly similar to several other Sherwood tracts known as the Glen and the Meadows, which are nearby. But specifically, the only home I'm aware of that is sold anywhere within that time period, even going back, not quite sure how far it would go back, but going forward since that time, I know the only home in my development that sold was the one located at 230 Lake Sherwood Drive. And that home is, I have attached the summary regarding that home to my documentation. That home is actually a little newer than my home. It sold just a few months after the new homes in numbers 2 and 3 on the assessor's diagram. It is located almost directly across from those 2 homes. I mean, it's just at the edge. I think it's just at the edge of the cove, where the cove ends. Let's see. I can tell you which one it is. I believe it's the one that's just is above that line that I referred to, and then to the right. So it's a little bit on the edge of the cove. So it arguably would be more impacted by the quality and condition of the cove, certainly much more so than numbers 2 and 3. And even though it's outside of the parameters, this is also part of the reason that I am here, is because this home sold for $2,175,000. It's a home that's quite a bit larger than mine by about 500 to 600 square feet. It's a little newer, and that had a price per square foot of $425. And so that's something that I want to be taken into consideration, even though I understand the parameters of the assessor. But that home is approximately the same size as the home across the lake, almost exactly the same size. This one at 230 was 5,113 square feet, and I believe the one used by the assessor was only 4,700 square feet. And it sold for over $1 million less, approximately $1 million less than that home across the lake. And so that, I think, in my view, shows 2 things. One, this home at 230 is of this approximate same age. It's the same development, same builder as mine. It's actually a couple of years newer. It's in a little bit better location than my home currently, based on the unfortunate current condition of the lake. And so the idea that the homes used for my appraisal were ones that sold for $1 million and well more than $1 million more than that caused me quite a bit of consternation. I don't think that's. I think a larger number of homes should have been considered, including many of the homes that I attached. I'm not going to go through each one, certainly. I don't think I need to do that, but I did quite a bit of research to arrive at my evaluation that I requested the assessor to consider. And that was based on a number of these homes. Not all, but most all of these homes that I referred to were built by Sherwood Construction. There is one that is behind the gates, which still was a little bit higher. It was $445 per square foot. But the ones in the area, if you look at the map the assessor provided, you can see the area of a number of the homes that I considered. If you look just up a little bit from the red subject home, there are a number of homes along Baybrook Court. The developments that you can see right around the subject home were all by the same builder and are of approximately the same age as the subject home. They are not on the lake. That is correct. Some of them do have lake views. But my argument is that since the condition of the lake was so deteriorated as of January 15, not only was it a detriment, but at a minimum one needs to at least include some homes that do not have a lakefront that are of the same age and construction quality as the subject home, since the lake was of such poor condition. It certainly wasn't at that time adding the amount of value that it would if it were in a better condition and it were actually had water in it. So that's my concern regarding that. As far as proof that that little micro area has been significantly affected, other than that $1 million price drop that the home took that was located really right at the end of the cove, there are 3 other homes that have been trying to sell in that area. The one was literally next door to mine, which went through numerous price drops. Eventually, they dropped the home value over $400,000, and they were still not able to get any kind of a buyer. And that was on the market during that, I believe, during that time period. It was on the market for over a year, and recently it was taken off the market. They were not able to sell it. There's another property also located directly on the cove that has the direct view of some of the photographs that I supplied, where I mentioned there's stagnation and odor that detracts from the values. The bottom line is the condition of the lake, not only now, but as of January 15th, is just unfortunately deplorable. It's just, well, maybe that's not a good word, but in any event, it's terrible right now. And the condition as of right now and January of 15 are very similar, and I will want to explain why. I did try to get data regarding the exact lake level, but was not able to obtain that. But having lived there myself, right on the lake, I know what the lowest level was before it rained this last winter. So that would have been basically the time of the valuation that we're discussing here, January of 15. So that winter from 14 to 15. Then the next year, which was this last winter, 15 to 16, was the most rain that we've had since the drought. It was a fair amount of rain, but nonetheless, the condition is still, so even though the drought has continued, we had sufficient rain last year that the lake right now is basically at about the same level and same condition as it was in January of 15. And I have photographs of that. I didn't go out on January 15th to take photographs, but the ones that I think are black and white that I've attached are of approximately that time frame. My children were riding their bikes across the lake because it was completely dry. So these are late fall 14. The other photographs that I included are probably late summer, early fall this year, but they are, if you look at them, it's a little different, but it's virtually the same in terms of the deteriorated quality. So the bottom line is that I want the condition of that specific lake area in Parcel B, the China Flats area, to be taken into consideration in my value. The homes that were used, 1, 2, and 3, were all 2 and 3 were all brand new, of very high quality, higher quality than our home, even when it was new, with a great deal of amenities. And then number 1, although of approximately the same age as my home, had just been was in basically new condition. And so, although they are comparables, I don't believe that those 3 alone will result in an accurate value. So what I did in terms of reaching my value, just so it's understood, I looked at the comps that I have provided to the board. They ranged in value from approximately $418 a square foot up through $445 a square foot, and that one was a home of approximate same size and age, even though it was behind the gates. I was a little higher. And then I look at the value of the one that sold down the street from me in May of 15, which was $425 a square foot, which is in a better portion of the lake currently than mine is. And then I look at the value of the one that was referred to by the assessor, and that sold, the home number 1, which is the closest in age to my home, sold for $592 a square foot. That's a very, very significant difference. And I appreciate and understand that there was somewhat of a downgrade in terms of the value to get to the 2-1. But I still think that it's too high based on the current condition. I think that a value of $420 a square foot is fair and reasonable. And I base that on looking at the range and the condition of the lake as it was on January of 15. Just give me one moment to see if there's anything else that I wanted to add. I'm just going to assume that the board has had a chance to look at the photographs that I attached. I'll just very briefly go over the color photographs. I did these since the last hearing, and I think they perhaps tell the story best. The photograph on the very first page, the color photograph, where I indicate the water is at normal level, this was probably around, photograph taken around maybe 2004 to 6. I don't know exactly what year, but this was not quite at the high level, but this was a fairly typical level for many years before the drought came into effect. And if you look at the photograph at the bottom, the lake was still at this point in reasonable condition. There were still water for boats to navigate behind the home. In fact, it's a very popular fishing spot because the fish congregate there. There's ducks, et cetera, and a lot of the boats come through there to fish, but that hasn't happened it's been almost maybe it's not probably quite 5 years. I was trying to figure when the beginning of the drought was specifically and when it started to affect us so greatly, but it's been 3 to 4 years. It's not just been this last couple of years, as I think the board probably knows. So this area is very uniquely affected. If you look at the second picture there on the bottom and you look at the bank, you can see where the higher water level was. It's maybe 2 to 3 feet higher. But again, this is about 3 to 4 years ago. And then when you go to the aerial shot, now this was something that, as often is the case, various sites will snap a shot of a home, and I just ran across this online. This was my testimony, in my opinion, is that this was late 14, probably a little bit before the valuation date. I think that the level was even a little lower than what's reflected in this aerial shot, but I thought it would be instructive and helpful. You can clearly see what happened when the water level went down so much. It didn't affect the whole lake equally. Everyone else along the lake has a lower level, but they still can use the lake. Instead of being 20 feet deep, it's maybe 15 feet deep or whatever the depth is. Whereas when you have just a fairly shallow cove like this, you can see that everything just completely dries up. I have the arrow here showing where my home is. Mine's the middle home on the end there. And the dock, what my view is and has been for now several years, is the photograph at the bottom, which is the dock across from my home, which is completely out of the water. The boat just sits there. And so not only is it that there's no water that we can use for boating, fishing, et cetera, there's also, especially when it's warm, a smell factor, and there's a lot of odor from the seaweed. The lake is maintained when it's deep enough. They cut the weeds, et cetera, but they have not been able to do that for 3 to 4 years. So the condition is just deteriorated so much that it absolutely affects and has affected the value very significantly. As I know, the homes, no homes have sold in this cove at all since the one that I referred to here at 230 Lake Sherwood, to the best of my knowledge. In fact, like I said, a couple have been taken off. 2 of 3 that tried to sell have been taken off the market and were not able to be sold. Then the next photograph is was taken this last, I think before the last hearing or around the time of the last hearing. This is effectively what the current condition is, but as I said, it's very similar to the condition in January 15 because we did get a rain, but then not enough that it's much better than it was. It's basically the same as it was a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. And then the bottom photograph does show where my subject home is there. And then if you look on the left, that is my dock on the left, which is adjacent to the home next to mine. There's 6 dock spaces there. None of the boats are there. They're all gone. They had to be relocated somewhere else. I'm not quite sure where everyone else found to put their boat, but mine is down in front of near the subject homes 2 and 3, tied up to a tree. That's the situation there with respect to those photographs. So my biggest concern is that I do not believe although I don't fault the assessor for handling the appraisal in the manner they normally do, I feel very strongly that the overall condition of the lake, the market has not at all reflected the condition of the lake behind my specific subject home, and I think the valuation needs to be dropped based on that. And that's all I have right now.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to any questions from the assessor to the applicant.
Could I get the clerk of the board to? Yes, I have a reference document. This will be Assessor's Exhibit B.
And if I need to, I would like to mark my exhibits for identification also. Is that understood? All right.
Okay.
Yes, so the applicant's packet was Exhibit 1, and this will be Assessor's Exhibit B.
Yes. The applicant was kind enough to provide the comparables prior to hearing, and we opted to put them on a map to give the board a better idea of where hers are as opposed to where ours are. Ms. Thompson, how many of your comparables are directly influenced by the lake?
One moment. When you're referring to my comparables, are you
Yes.
referring to, I believe that I included, I think I included at least one of yours as well. So you're referring to that one as well?
Yes,
or-
ma'am.
All right.
Just for clarification, her comp number 7 is our comp number 1.
Thank you.
All right. So that are affected by the lake. Number 1, 230 Lake Sherwood Drive is. Oh, here's Abbotsbury. One moment. I don't know if Abbotsbury has a lake view or not. The homes, many of these homes, Abbotsbury is located directly above the cove. But I don't know, I have to be honest, I don't know if they have a view or not, but they are located in fairly close proximity. Baybrook Court is located directly adjacent to the cove in the development called the Glen. A number of homes there do have a view of the lake, and what area they have a view of is the cove. So as to this specific one, if they have views from their second floor, I don't know if it says here or not. But if they have views, and the area they drive by in order to access their gate, if you look at the photograph, or if you look at this very small photograph at the top of that printout I provided, you can see the condition of the lake when it was much fuller on the photograph, and directly across from the very end of the lake where it says, let's see, it's so small, I think it says, can't even read it, something court. That's the actual entrance to that Glen development. So this particular home, Baybrook, is very close to the lake, probably maybe more than a couple of 100 feet, but it's very close. Jaycroft is the development behind my home, up above. Oh, well, you have these all mapped out already. So let's see here. 1, 3, 3 must be the one on Baybrook. So that could have an effect. Let's see, 4 is Jaycroft. That probably does not have a view, would be my guess, knowing where it is, because there's other homes behind it. In fact, I lived right next to where number 2 is here, in my home before the one I'm in. So, but I don't think Jaycroft has a view. And then Oak Cottage Court is number 5. That perhaps has a view. Let me see if it says. they note in the description that the Lovely gated community has access to boating on Lake Sherwood, which the area immediately adjacent where their boating would be is the area I'm talking about. And then Upper Lake Road, that is across the lake. That would definitely have a view of the lake, but it is on the complete opposite side of the lake. So the water level is low there. They have views of the lake, but they wouldn't be impacted specifically by the cove area that I'm referring to. Just they'd only be impacted by the overall lower condition of the lake from the drought. And then the home that we both viewed, number 7 on your list, the one that sold for $592 a square foot at 966 Lake Sherwood Drive, that is certainly right on the lake. Somewhat, it's elevated higher. I think it would have far less impact on it from a lower lake level than almost any of the other homes we're referring to, because it's quite a bit above. It's like on an embankment or up high. So it has a view of the lake. It would not be as affected, in my view, and they can't even see my part of the lake. That doesn't affect it at all, but they have a up above view overlooking the lake. So I would say that would be the one that would be least affected by the condition of the lake, or the depth of the lake.
No further questions.
Okay. Any questions from the board to the applicant? I have a few, if anyone wants to think about, or Mr. Curtis, go ahead. I had the venti coffee, so maybe it makes me not wait long enough for someone to ask a question. Just a few questions related to the subject property.
Certainly.
So I think it's the photographs speak for themselves and answer a lot of the questions that I previously had for the assessor in terms of how the subject is affected versus the comps for the assessor. But in terms of the drought and the current lake level, I assume that, Ms. Thompson, you don't have more information than us in terms of how long your house will be sitting in front of not unnavigable waters. And
no, I don't.
Okay.
One of the other issues or concerns is that over, I don't know when it was exactly dug out, but the homes were built around 2001, 2002, and it was probably dug out there around, I'm guessing, around 2000, maybe late 2000, somewhere around there before they built the homes and graded the lots. There are culvert pipes, as you can probably see. I think they're in one of the photographs, that where water drains into the lake, certainly, and it comes in there first. And so I'm not an expert. I don't pretend to be regarding silt buildup, et cetera. But one of the concerns that I have is that there has been a lot of silt laid down there, especially when a few years before we had too much rain, as some of you may recall. And so there is the level of the lake right there is, in my opinion, higher than it was obviously when it was constructed. How much, I don't know, but I just know from my own observations that the depth of the lake, looking at photographs I have when I first moved in there in 2004, what I view to be the depth, when it's really clear in the spring, you can literally see the bottom of the lake. And so it's come up somewhat. So I don't know how much that's going to affect it. For example, you would have thought that with the rain that we had this last winter, that the level of the lake would be higher than it is. And part of the problem of it drying up is that there's all kinds of growth in there, organic growth, plants and material and loam or whatever. And so that's kind of building up as it would, especially without the water there. So I don't know. I have no way of knowing. But as of 15, and again, if this was just a one-time thing, I wouldn't have gone to the extent that I did to go through this hearing. But when I noticed that those were the homes that were being used, and obviously, and I don't fault Mr. Denham or the assessor's office, they wouldn't have any way of knowing how unique that cove is and how it's been affected. They would have, they wouldn't know. And I had some photos, but I think the ones that are more helpful are when I did the comparison that I brought today, and I didn't have an opportunity to provide that to Mr. Denham before the hearing today. I just had the black and white photographs that you see.
Okay,
So
thank
I
you.
don't know how long it will be affected. I know it is still currently affected. I guess that would be my one question, is with respect to any changes, if any, that are made as of 15 going forward, how that is handled in terms of a future valuation. So that's my question, if it's changed, how that would affect it.
Okay. And I also just wanted to confirm that you're not aware of any plans to dredge out the cove or make it deeper in order that would make it, more equally affected or not affected by lake level to other homes?
Actually, to the contrary, a number of the homeowners have contacted the Sherwood Valley Board regarding that, and we learned when we went about a month or so ago that that portion of the lake is not, I think it's still not, no, it's not included at all in the maintenance of the lake that has been, is put upon the association. And I still haven't gotten an answer as to why that is, perhaps because it was not part of the plans they used since it wasn't originally part of the lake. So they're trying to add it, but we're told that will be at least 2 years before they would have permits and the ability to even do anything about the condition.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from the board?
I'm working on it.
Okay. So we'll just take a minute while we think.
Certainly.
Chairman Stern, I just have a question.
Mhm.
You mentioned odor is an issue. For the home that's at number 7, which is this assessor's comp number 1, do they have a similar odor problem?
No. You're talking about, number 1 of theirs and 7 of mine. No, not at all. That's way down on the end. There's no stagnant areas. Really, there are no other stagnant areas that I'm aware of, other than possibly Carlisle Canyon, which is completely across the lake. And that was just recently built up, so they just dredged that area and built a number of new homes in there. The other far end of the lake, of course, is at the dam, and so that's perhaps the deepest even area of the lake. But I'm not aware of any other stagnant areas other than this area. And it is an issue, definitely, especially in the summer. All year, it's an issue. And we've tried to have them fix that and take out the weeds, et cetera, even if there's no water. And there's really nothing they can do with the current condition. They can't get a boat in there. The soil is moist enough that you can't, unless they come in and dredge it, and they have no plans to do that at this time whatsoever, and don't even have the authority to do that if they wish to.
Thank you. Before Mr. Curtis asks his question, or while he's getting ready, I have one other for the assessor, Mr. Denham. For the assessors, the photograph for Assessor's Exhibit B, do you know when that photograph was taken? Approximately?
I'm sorry, are you asking about the one with the valuation?
Yeah, I'm asking this is for the assessor.
I believe it was, oh, I'm sorry, that's on. I believe it was the same time as, on or about the same time, the same flyover as the Exhibit A.
Just appears that in the Exhibit B that the area of the cove where the subject property is there's no water in. In Exhibit A, there does appear to be water.
If you take a look at it a little bit closer, you'll also see that we've panned out a little bit.
Right.
So the banks are a little bit closer. So there is a pinch. And if you see in the map on Exhibit A where the pinch is, it's less noticeable and almost non-existent on Exhibit B. So yes.
Yeah, I was just curious because they're clearly taken at different times because there are different features in the maps. I was just trying to understand which, when each was taken. Thank you.
Okay. Couple questions. If, to Mr. Denham, did you ever think about maybe using some sales of a similar square foot home, similar aged home that weren't on the lake, just to show that, hey, if you don't have a lake, this is how much it would be?
Generally, when I find 3 homes on the subject street, I like since you're asking, I mean, I typically don't go above Potaro to find comparable sales below Potaro. So I don't,
Okay, so you
that, and also I did mention before that Lake Sherwood itself, just the street, forget everything else you've heard, has a certain ambiance in that area compared to like Upper Lake. Obviously, when I can, as in this case, stay, say, north of the lake, on the north side of the lake, with comps on the north side of the lake, I would do that. I would, if I had them available, I typically wouldn't go to the south side of the lake
All right.
to search for more comps. So
That's-
it's kind of like geography fell in,
Sure.
it is what, I didn't find those comps. Those comps found me, and they're
Okay.
very close by.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, to the applicant. So when you applied for this, you got the little brochure that said, you can't use sales outside of 90 days, correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So you understand that comps 1 through 4 are outside of the 90 days?
I do, but they are, to make my point and my argument as they apply to the ones that are within the period, I still think that they are relevant.
Sure,
and they have some
I
weight.
understand, but
I'm not.
for 2016, maybe appeal, but not for 2015, correct?
Well, I think that because it's such a small and unique area, you need to look beyond just those 3 sales. If you're not going to use them per se for comps, you still need to look at a much larger area than just those 3 homes on the lake. So I think they're instructive. If they're technically going to be used in terms of the comparables on an appraisal, that may be different, but I do think it's important to have an overall understanding of the area. It's not so
Sure,
much that I'm offering them to say, okay, you must use these comps. I just think that it shows.
Sure. Okay.
I think it can be instructive without necessarily being a comp. I mean, it's still evidence that
I understand.
think should be considered.
And I would think that way too, but the little brochure said they're just not able to be used, period.
Well, then what I would expect the assessor to do would be to look at a broader area than just those 3 homes on the lake. The problem with that area, Mr. Denham is right, is that it's a very, very difficult, it's
Sure.
a very difficult area to find comps for, and you can have a home that is worth $7 million next to a home that's worth maybe,
But even with that,
500,000.
I agree, and even with that difficulty, he did find 3 that were adjacent to lake, correct? That were within the time frame.
Yes.
That was allowed by this form.
Yes, well, as I said, those are not, for many reasons, those are not, in my view, true comparables, or there wasn't enough taken into consideration. Mainly, the issue with those is primarily the lake, which they have a very deep area, the original part of the lake. They have a beautiful view that goes across the entire lake. If you look at their viewpoint, it's not just straight across. They look down lake and have
We got you.
a beautiful
We got
view.
you.
Yeah.
Now, so the 3 that we can use, 5, 6, and 7, you're coming up with a value of 1.9 something.
Yes.
Based on a square footage method, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if we just take those 3 comparables, how do you come up with 400 and, you're saying that the value you feel that's correct is 1.9 million, and that's based on a square footage of 420 per square foot?
Yes, I think that's based on,
So if we take the last 3 that we are able to use, again, I agree with you, but we just can't use comparables 1 through 4.
all
How do
right,
you come
well,
up with?
one moment.
How do you come up with 420? So Oak Cottage
One moment.
is
Well,
420.
Oak Cottage is 420.
Is that on a lake, though?
No, which is an advantage for that home, based on the current situation. Now, Oak Cottage Court is, let me just see which one that is, number 5. That is above the lake and probably has a view of the lake or of the cove. Number 5 on their map.
966 Lake, Sherwood Drive.
That's the one they used already, which I've already gone over as to why that's so different. It's not that you can't use it, it's just that it can't be compared. It's on the main part of the lake, it has a spectacular view, and it's newly remodeled and doesn't have any of the impact of the lake that I have. I mean, there were probably others that I could have used, but the one that you referred to on Upper Lake Road, that is behind the gates. That is of approximately, let's see, that sold for $1.9. That price per square foot was $4.45, but it is behind the gates. That is increased. I mean, that mine would be lower, comparable to that, as Mr. Denham says, because it is behind the gates. It has a beautiful view of the lake. It is on the.
Right.
I still believe that the 420 is reasonable and fair when you take those things into consideration. Because of the value, because of the lake itself, I mean, I don't know, I'm not a professional appraiser, so I don't know how you value the fact that, for example, Oak Cottage Court does not have what is unfortunately virtually a cesspool behind it.
Sure.
I'm sure they sold it.
I understand.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you, in you preparing for this, did you think about getting a professional appraisal? Because even though some of your data is good, and I get it, there needs to be adjustments for either being on the lake or not being on the lake, condition, quality, size. There are a lot of different variables. From my experience on your street, the homes vary quite a bit. You can have a $10 million home and you can have a $1 million home. As an appraiser, I appraised a home on Trentham that was a castle built by Rudolph Valentino, and I've appraised other properties that were just complete teardowns along the same street. So they vary quite a bit. Do you know what I mean? Did you think about getting an appraisal as opposed to just using a dollar per square foot method?
Well, part of what I was trying to do, no, I mean, I didn't want to invest another $600 or $700 to do that, but that's why I'm here at the board for you to hear my case. What I tried to do was, again, these homes on J. Craft and Oak Court, there's probably others if I had stuck to this time frame, but even then, this was still, it's still difficult to get a lot of comps in that tight of a time frame. I mean, there can be some of these areas, even like where I am, I mean, there can be one home sold in a year or two. So I know that the appraisers do not lock themselves to 90 days before and after. And there are other factors that go into the value than just the comparables, I guess, taking the comparables and then maybe looking, I mean, there's still the valuation based on the home itself, the overall condition.
Right, and those are factors that would be considered within an appraisal. You know, and those were factors that were used in the assessor's presentation, and those weren't factors that were used in yours. Do you know what I mean? So,
well, I think I've referred to them. I mean, I'm not a professional appraiser.
You
obviously.
have referred to them, but as far as quantifying adjustments, like how much a difference between being on the lake and not being on the lake would be.
Right. Well,
okay.
All I can tell you is that I have, for example, J. Croft Court, Oak Cottage Court. Some of these are on the lake and some are not. I haven't done per se a calculation. I think that in terms of what an appraiser would do in terms of the devaluation for the property based on the condition of the lake, that's subjective and is a very difficult thing for me or even for a professional to say, the fact that there's no water behind the lakefront home is worth X number of dollars. That's totally subjective, whether you're an appraiser or you're a homeowner. Or a buyer.
Sure.
So it's a very difficult thing, I think, for anyone, whether they're an appraiser or not, to tell you that there's an exact dollar figure. But
well, that's what an appraiser does. He breaks it down and he defines why there would be such a dollar amount. we as a board, we have to look at the amount of data and kind of figure out, what kind of does make sense. And I think just from my experience, although you've raised a lot of good points, an appraisal or a different kind of valuation where you break out those kinds of adjustments specifically for your kind of a home would have been more of a better help for us. You don't have a tract home in Santa Clarita where you can, tell exactly what the value is by square footage. Each of the homes on your street and in your area are so unique. They have to be broken out on a dollar amount for kind of a justification.
That's not totally true, though, because the homes there at Lakeside, including the one at 230, those are considered, I mean, they're
Have
perhaps...
you been in 230?
Yes, I have.
Okay. How would you compare that with your home?
It's a beautiful home. It's built about the same time. It's the same. They have the same kitchens, the same amenities. It's the same builder, the same tract. They were all built in succession. There's, I think, 14 total homes. So there were the 5 built in the Cove, and then these continue around the side of the lake. You can see it on their map. So it's very, very, very comparable. I mean, I guess
Did you supply us with any pictures of the inside of your home?
No, but I guess I could. But it's comparable to. It's similar and comparable to the one at 230. It's comparable to all of the homes that were built by Sherwood Construction at about that same time, which several of these are. They're all a very similar product. They have the same woods, same finishes.
But you would agree with me, at least along your street specifically, but generally in Lake Sherwood, the differences in quality and construction, age, size, view, appeal vary quite a bit.
They vary if they are not from the same builder. If they're not part of the Sherwood Development homes. Those don't vary very much at all. They're all fairly similar.
Sure, but along the street, I mean, there's some homes that were built 100 years ago, and there's some homes that were built a year ago.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, nothing else.
Okay, any other
Thank
questions from the board to the applicant? Okay, so we'll finish with closing summaries. We'll start with the applicant and end with the assessor.
All right, with respect to any closing remarks, my biggest argument with Mr. Denham's testimony here earlier, which was that he testified and felt very strongly that the marketplace in terms of all of Lake Sherwood would be similarly reflected by any condition that the lake was undergoing. He said that's, quote, sort of built into the market. And I would disagree strongly in this particular case. While in general, I think some type of a condition affecting a lake, such as overall drought that might reduce the level, would in some cases be similarly all of the homes on the lake would be similarly situated. I believe that I have proved in my case that is not the case, that my home is in a completely different situation than all 3 of the comps that were used, and that it is appropriate to downgrade the value based on that. I also want to point out that the amount that I'm requesting that the valuation be changed is not incredibly significant. However, having reviewed all this information, that's my assessment and my opinion. I think I've backed my opinion with quite a bit of proof, and I understand that I'm not a professional. I wasn't going to invest further in having someone come out and appraise it for that purpose as of January 15th, 15. But knowing that the board obviously has expertise in this area and having presented this, I think there is certainly a reasonable and supported argument that a downward reduction in value is appropriate under the circumstances. The amount that I'm requesting, the actual dollar amount that I'm requesting that it be reduced by is, I didn't calculate it, but it's not percentage-wise. It's not a huge amount, but I think it is appropriate. to take the value down. I believe it was 2,169. And I'm requesting it be 91943. So I think that a downward a reduction is appropriate because it's clear that when the assessor reached the value of my home, it did not have the information that the board has now regarding the condition of the lake. And so that was not taken into account. None of those comps were affected in that regard. Additionally, using just those 3 homes, even if we put the issue of the lake aside for a moment, using just those 3 homes skews the value based on my argument, inappropriately upward because of the fact that there are so few, hardly any new homes. In fact, those 2 homes that were sold there were the only new homes that have been built on Lake Sherwood in I don't know how many years. And so that causes their value to be exponentially increased. And it did result in prices that were well above anything in my development sold for before or since. And even though I understand you're relying on the 90-day market calculation, the problem with that is that if you have a home that sells in May, that home is never going, how's that going to be? Well, I guess you could go backwards, but I thought you said 90 days either way. So a home sold in May or any of those months outside of would be September through March at any given year would never be considered. And I don't think that that's reasonable.
I would like to interject just for the applicant's benefit. I didn't mean to cut you off in your summation, but the 90-day rule works for 90 days, more than 90 days after the lien date,
Right.
but you aren't similarly prohibited to a narrow band 90 days prior. You can go earlier than that.
All right, that's probably my error. And again, I think if I had included that, there would be probably some other homes that I could have definitely considered, but I didn't use that that information. I was trying to look at, get as close as I could in time and show what the trend was for that area. All right. The other thing I wanted to reiterate is that the area right there on the cove has had 3 homes that have attempted to sell. 3 homeowners that have attempted to sell since the home sold at 230 Lake Sherwood Drive. 2 of those 3 homes, after price drops of $400,000 to $500,000, took them off the market and couldn't sell them even at the prices that they were at a lower price. Just no one wanted to buy in that location. So that's, again, something very difficult to quantify and calculate with respect to how much valuation should be reduced based on that. I realize that this is not hopefully not a permanent situation, but it has been of such significant duration of now 3 to 4 years with no end in sight that I think it is appropriate to take serious consideration, even though we're just looking at the valuation on January 1st of 15. All right, I believe that really, the main thing is that and now I hear from Mr. Denham that the condition of my specific area of the lake was not taken into account in the appraisal. And had it been, the value would be lower. What I'm requesting in terms of reduction is not so significant that it is unreasonable, and I think I have provided sufficient documentation to, and I don't believe that the the assessor has sufficiently met their burden of proof because they base their valuation on the fact that any condition at the lake would be similarly reflected by the whole marketplace, and I believe that through my testimony I've established that is not the case. This is a unique area, and valuations have been much more significantly affected than the properties that they used in our in the comparables. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And let's go to any closing remarks from the assessor.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Thompson, for coming out and participating in the process today. We differ with regards to the comparables chosen, except for one. We have one shared comparable. The factor base year value is $2,543,456. The roll value that's being appealed is $2,169,000. The question before the board is whether or not the adjustment that was initially made by the assessor is sufficient enough to cover the condition issues brought up by the applicant today. Thank you.
Okay, we'll close the hearing to public testimony, and I'm fine with deliberating now and coming to a decision unless anyone would like to deliberate in closed session. So why don't we do that? Happy to hear from any of the board, or I can go first, whatever works.
So I'll have to side with the assessor simply because an analysis of, from both the applicant and the assessor, the assessor's analysis just breaks out, like I'd mentioned, the different adjustments for the homes, and it gives a little bit more of a, I believe, a correct analysis of the value, because there are so many different adjustments that would be required to fairly evaluate the subject in either, you know, a narrative type of valuation or a market grid kind of evaluation. And because we do have to stick with the applicant's comparables 5, 6, and 7 only, in this board, her comparables just were not as good as the assessors. I do agree with the applicant. The assessors' comparables aren't that great either, but I think they're more comparable than the applicant's comparables 5, 6, and 7. And I do feel awful for the applicant if I had a home that backed the lake and had lake and water level issues. I would be appealing my assessment also. So anyway, that's how I'm going.
I agree with Mr. Curtis with your assessment that the assessor prepared a evaluation with better structure in terms of adjustments and comparables. However, I think that the assessor made a fundamental mistake on this assessment and did not understand the location of the home in terms of the conditions in the cove where it's located. And I can understand that with so many assessments and from both the comps used and the testimony provided, it's obvious that there was not a clear understanding on the valuation date of the conditions at the home. And so I can't consider this at all on parallel with adjustments or with any of the assessor's comps that are lakefront and do have an entirely different set of parameters that affect the value related to being a lakefront home. And so the subject property on the valuation date was not on the lake, did not have navigable water, did not have a dock, nor ability to get to the home. It had mud, bad smell, and there is no known date when that would return to normal. So by definition, it cannot be compared to homes that are on the lake with a consistent and parallel impairment during the drought if there is still water in front of the homes. And so because of that and because of the what I think are very compelling photographs I think just alone, the applicant's comparable number 5, which does fall within the right time parameters, is much more comparable than any of the assessor's comps. Because in this case, I, as a buyer, objectively would much rather buy a home with a lake view that does not front mud, a bad smell, and no navigable water near the home as any consideration compared to other lakefront homes. And so that comp, plus the photographs and the information submitted by the applicant, to me, far override the assessor's valuation, which I think is just fundamentally flawed because of the lack of understanding of the location of the home. So I would side with the applicant.
Well, I would disagree with you there on that basis.
Okay, it's on now. Sorry.
I think, the assessor and the comps he's used derived a value that's considerably higher than what the enrolled value is right now. And so I think he has basically recognized the condition. If we look at the methodology used by the applicant, this price per square foot number, if you take the average on those 5, 6, and 7 sales, that works out to about $485 a square foot, and you multiply that by the area in the home there, you come up with a value that's higher than the enrolled value. So I would agree with Mr. Curtis that I would rule for the assessor in this case.
Okay. Any other comments? I would just, one additional comment I would make is that there is no connection between enrolled value and a valuation on a date and a Prop 8 valuation. The enrolled value is simply a value based on the time of the purchase, which could involve totally different conditions. And so that's my opinion about that.
One more comment. I forgot to mention that for comparable number 7 for the applicant, the dollar per square footage is quite high. I don't really have it right here. 500 and something.
$92.
Right. So again, the average of your 3 comparables, if you're going to do a dollar per square foot method, is quite high. Is over the $420 number that the applicant put down. So.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay. So we'll look for a motion.
Motion is to sustain the assessor's recommended roll value of $2,169,000, where land is $1,605,000, and the improvements are $564,000.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Curtis and second by Mr. Crow. And so if we could all vote on our screens, I will vote against the motion. And so we have motion carries and in favor of the assessor. Thank you to both applicant and the assessor's representatives for your information and your time.
All right, thank you for your time.
Good. Okay, we have one more hearing. I would like to push forward and finish rather than take a lunch break for an hour, but maybe if the others would like to take a 5-minute break. I'm seeing a lot, assuming you're not wanting to high-five me right now. Okay, we're back in session at 12:35, and we are hearing item 37 on the agenda, application 15-10915, and the applicant is Maria Aros. And it looks like we have a single-family home, owner-occupied, and I'm having a hard time with the new application form. Oh, it's on the back. This is a Prop 8 decline in value application? Does that all sound correct?
January 1st, 2015, decline in value.
Okay, thank you. So what we'll do is start with just a quick overview from the assessor, and then assuming that the burden of proof is with the assessor again in this case, then we'll start with the assessor's presentation and go through questions, and then Ms. Aros will hear your presentation, okay?
Chairman Stern, would it be possible to also confirm with the applicant that no findings of fact are requested as
Sure.
stated on the application?
Okay, so Ms. Aros, you checked on your application that you do not require findings of fact, and that is a formal summary of events of the hearing today prepared by the county council in case you were to appeal the ruling of this board to Superior Court. And so Ms. Porsche wanted me to verify that that's not something that you require?
Let me understand that. That means
Sure.
that if I wanted to pursue later on and go to Superior Court, that, oh no, I'm fine. I won't.
It's a document that you would probably need,
If I
my
wanted to-
understanding.
Okay. If I wanted to go to Superior Court, right?
Right.
No, it's okay.
Okay. Okay, so let's hear, if we could, an overview from the assessor, and then we'll start with the assessor's presentation.
Do you all have a copy of mine? Or-
Not yet.
Oh, please. Okay. Once again.
Okay. Does the applicant have a copy? Okay, so we'll just wait 1 second, Mr. Horn, until we get everyone.
And to the applicant, was the last thing that you saw, was that informative to you?
Oh, the last hearing
The
that we
last
just
hearing.
had?
The last hearing? Oh, yes. Yes, I really liked hearing what was going on.
Sure, so that's the structure we'll be doing again.
Okay, yes.
Okay, go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right. The property being appealed is a single-family residence located at 1322 Martin Luther King Drive in Oxnard, parcel number 215-0275-045. It is a decline in value January 1, 2015 appeal. The application number is 15-10915. And as the single-family residence is owner-occupied, the burden of proof will rest with the assessor.
Okay.
Thank you. Once again, Rick Denham, Ventura County Assessor's Office. I will, once again, go to page 1, which looks like this. And it has the different values. This purchase, this property was originally purchased in the 2005-2006 era, so their factored base year is quite high. It was basically purchased at the peak. We had corrected the Prop 8 to $580,000. Upon receiving information from the taxpayer, and I'm sure she'll go into it in detail, I'll just briefly say what happened. She apparently was part of a group of homeowners that sued the builder. The result of that suit, in her case, she did receive a $2,000 settlement. Once we became aware of that settlement, we sort of didn't want to just do two, so we lowered it $5,000, and she can explain in more detail. So that's why you see a recommended value slightly lower than the already lowered Prop 8 value. The applicant's, at the time of filing, value is $460,000. If you could all turn to the next page, and that's the one with the pictures, and it has the comps on it. This is a Casa Bonita tract home. It's located in Oxnard. They were built in 2004, so relative to our housing stock now, a relatively new house or new housing tract. All of my comparable sales are from the subject housing track. I do want to explain there are 5 or 6 different models, and I beg your pardon, I'm not sure. And I believe they go from about 1,800 to 2,000 to start with, all the way up to 2,984. We, in fact, are the largest model, and they all sort of have their distinct price ranges. So what I did was I obtained the last 2 comps in a reasonable time period. That's comps 1 and 2, which are model matches. And that's why I chose those comps. Comp 3 is the next largest size model, and that's why I picked that one. So you can see my comps 1, 2, and 3. Certainly comps 1 and 2 based on size, but really comp number 3 was also. And so that's why I chose those 3. They're all within 1/10 of a mile of the subject property. They're all from the same track, all from the same builder. If you would turn the next page over, I have my comparable page. If you want to know geographically, it's roughly south of Gonzales and west of Rose in North Oxnard. It's an area of not just this track, but there's a number of newer tracks in that area that were developed between 2004 and I think it was 2007. You see my subject, and then you see the 3 comparables very close by, and they really speak for themselves. And those are the comps that I used. The comps have a sales price range between 500 and 570. I mean 570 and 576. They have an adjusted value range between 573 and 594. We chose to come in at 575, and that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Denham. And Ms. Aros, this is a time for you to ask questions if you have any based on the presentation that Mr. Denham just gave.
What I would ask the assessor's office is, I'm familiar with the home on Apollo and the home on Sombra, and they have major remodeling to those homes. There is no remodeling in my home as far as upgraded cabinets, upgraded flooring. There's a lot of major, like I say, upgrades. And I know that you didn't come out to my home based on I was out of town the day you wanted to come over, but I feel that that's something that would have to be taken under consideration with my property. Are you aware that there's major upgrades on those 2 homes?
To be honest with you, when I looked at all 3 of them, they all spoke of upgrades, but when I looked at them, they kind of looked alike. And from the original, I was also able to see some earlier sales, and those upgrades apparently were done some time ago. I'm not sure when, or they're part of the original house. I couldn't really tell. All of the homes, in addition to these 3, I looked at a number of homes, and they all seem to look very similar. Often in the case of in our numbers, less than, they're roughly 10 years old when they sold. The value of upgrading is sort of not as great than with a home that's several years old versus, one that's been upgraded. Also, once again, I looked extensively for feedback from the buyers of these homes as to anything, how they felt about the condition. In the case of the buyers of all 3 of these homes, they thought their home was typical for your area. So that's why I did what I did. Thank you.
I just want to address the board because I feel I'm not really prepared for this type of court hearing, but I choose to go ahead because I want to leave this behind. I want to thank you guys for letting me put myself together a little while ago. I have a lot of major other issues going on in my home, and I just want to, the reason I'm here today is because of I am requesting the reduction based on the fact that if there was a limit law to houses, my house would qualify. The lawsuit that was against the builder went into bankruptcy. So it doesn't mean that the $4,000 that they awarded was the amount of the damage or the defects on these homes. The damage of the defects was $140,000. And I have the verification that I think I submitted to you guys. Unfortunately, there's no such thing as a limit law to the house, but I feel that the property taxes are way too high. I know it's not relevant that I am, right after I bought my house in 2000, purchased it in 2006, which is at the highest peak of Ventura County. Unfortunately, not of anybody's fault but mine, but in 2007, I did retire on disability from the county. I went for major brain surgeries, and I'm just trying to keep my home. And I'm not an attorney. I don't understand the law a lot, and I just need some help in trying to keep my home, and not let it lose it because the property taxes are so, high. This house, if sold right now, and I was to let them know everything because I haven't done any remodeling to my home. The kitchen cabinets that came with there everything was low quality when we bought the house. Of course, not me knowing you get excited, oh, we're gonna get a new house, and you don't expect to get sick and not work anymore. The quality of all the things that were put, the material, the workmanship in the homes were really bad. So if I sold my home right now, even though they're at the range of $570,000, like the assessors state, I don't doubt they do their job, But if I was to let them know, okay, this is going on with the electricity, this is going on with sorry, I can't think, but I think I've got my notes. Hold on.
Okay, let's just take a break for 1 second if we could, Ms. Saros. And I want to make sure that we first have a chance for the board to ask questions of the assessor, and then we can go more into your presentation. Okay. Before we do that, do you have any questions based on their presentation? No. Okay, so let's just take a minute, see if the board has any questions of the assessor's presentation.
To the assessor, so as far as the workmanship of this kind of a track, and if there are any issues like what she's talking about, I would assume that probably those issues apply to other homes in the track, correct? And that's why you didn't use outside tracks, is because maybe...
When I was aware of the lawsuit from the applicant, first of all, I stayed inside the track because I could. There was plenty of data. It was not difficult on my part. I tried to stay with the same model home, exactly. I did interview and a couple of realtors on the subject that were not connected to any of my comps and certainly not connected to the subject property. Some of them were aware of the lawsuits. Some were not, oddly enough. And there were, I don't know how many litigants there were. When we have a case, and a lot of people come to us and say, I'm suing, so you have to lower the value of my home. Until the lawsuit ends, we really can't do anything. And a couple things you need to know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this case settled in roughly May of 15. So we now know the outcome. Sometimes you win lawsuits, sometimes you do not. If they were, claiming 140 in damage and received 4, most builders have insurance companies. I mean, there's money, and I'm sure he did go through bankruptcy, but that's, who knows if that's related, what that was related to. But I looked at all of the homes that I used sold during the period that the litigation was still going on, so that's what the market was reflective of, and appears that some people knew about the litigation and some people didn't. And obviously, all these homes usually have inspections. It's not just a realtor that goes through them, at least that's my understanding nowadays. And also, just to see if there was a, backwash, I looked into the future, and this neighborhood is actually behaving like most properties in its price range. In the future, her house and every other one in that tract are going up. And I checked it all the way to today's date. So once again, I'm applying, not everybody agrees with me, but I'm applying the market analysis of what's happened in that tract and where the price points have been from closed sales with all of this going on.
Sure, okay.
And so, yes, I considered, and I apologize, she now said $4,000, but she told me $2,000 in a prior conversation that she received from the court. And so we just kind of we ended up taking $5, so we covered it either way, but we took that off as a sign. In other words, all of the problems that the taxpayers are discussing have been adjudicated by a court and a full legal case, and they came to the conclusion that they came to. And I'm not trying to second guess the court, nor am I trying to second guess the applicant. I did try, obviously, to see the home, made myself available, and due to lots of things, the applicant was unable to let me see the home. And so I have to work with what I have. And that's why I'm here today, and based on what I know of the case, which was fully adjudicated. I'm not questioning the case at all because it's already been adjudicated, and I'm not re-adjudicating it because it's done.
Sure.
And like one of the realtors expressed to me that, they knew there were some individuals, but they have full disclosure, and that's that. They're okay with it.
Okay, just so this is a single-family residence, not a PUD or a condo ownership?
No, it's a single-family residence, that's correct.
So they own the land?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What does PA on the market grid mean? You adjusted 3,000, I think, for it?
That's a patio.
So you're saying that she has a covered patio or a slab patio, or?
It's a covered patio.
Okay. And just to the applicant, you do have a covered patio?
What do you mean by covered patio? There's no walls.
You have a slab and then you have a wood?
It
just has a piece of wood or some material
Yeah, it just has a
over it.
piece of wood, a roof, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's not connected to the house, and it doesn't have any walls. We just made like a shade for
Yeah,
a little shade
Yeah.
area.
Okay, but you
Thank
do
you.
have one?
Yes.
Any other questions?
Well, Mr. Denner, or maybe the question should be maybe to the applicant. Do you know what the nature of those, the defects that the applicant's bringing up?
I will let the applicant speak on her own behalf.
Okay, what was the question?
So Mr. Crow was just, asking about some detail related to the
It
issues.
looks like they're going to be laid out in the applicant's presentation if the board wants to hold
So,
on.
we'll be transitioning to that. Thank you, Mr.
To the assessor, did you look on the MLS when you researched the comps? Multiple listing service?
Yes, I did.
So with the narrative, did any of the narrative bring up like developer issues resolved or anything to that nature?
Not that I was able to see.
On the MLS narrative?
Not on the MLS,
Okay.
no.
So they didn't bring that up?
No.
All right, thank you.
Chairman Stern, I have one question, if I may ask. The applicant mentioned that comps 1 and 3 had some upgrades, and she mentioned hardwood floors. What is the market value if her house doesn't have hardwood floors? How much would be the difference in market value between otherwise identical homes with and without hardwood floors that are a total living area of 2,984 square feet?
What type of hardwood floors are we talking about?
All I heard was, I don't know, without the
Yeah,
applicant.
see, it depends on, you know, are we talking about hardwood, you know, with quotation marks around it, with it being laminate or actual thick hardwood floors? It's difficult to extract a number because any difference in price may not just be the hardwood floors. Someone may have hardwood floors, but the kitchen may be really tricked out compared to the one you're comparing it to. So there may be the extraction in pulling out that one commodity may get lost in translation.
And let me further confuse you to answer your question. If you'll notice, comp number 2 did not have any upgrading, okay? Yet its sales price seems to be exactly the same as those with alleged upgrading. And so my difficulty is realtor fluff. And the other problem is sometimes they do upgrade. And I noticed on one of these, it was particularly unflattering, I would call the upgrade. And I think it's reflected in the price that they eventually, got the same as one that didn't have any upgrading allegedly. So it's really, really more difficult than just put a cost on it and add it on. Very difficult. In this case, after I got feedback from the sellers in the form of nobody said, boy, this house is really great. The buyers, I mean, I left them all the same. I kind of take feedback, I look at different things. Nothing wowed me when I looked at it. The three of them looked the same when I saw them on the MLS. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board for the assessment? Okay, Ms. Aros, if you have more information you'd like to discuss? Looks like we
Yes.
do.
I wanted to clarify that 4,000 to the 2,000, and that is that the 4,000 is what the courts awarded in the bankruptcy, because it was all a bankruptcy result case.
And just, sorry to interrupt you, but we'll take, the packet we just received will be applicant's Exhibit 1. So, go ahead.
Okay. And attorney, of course, whatever attorney I had requested at the time, before the bankruptcy, took 40%, even though he didn't represent me in bankruptcy. But just wanted to clarify that 2,000, 4,000 deal for the assessor's office and yours. Also, the major upgrades in those two homes, which is the Apollo and the Sombra, are not only floors. It's kitchen cabinets, it's chrome molding, it's putting in special cabinets for your TVs and stuff. I mean, I've been in those two homes previously and when they were up for sale, and they were really nice. My home has our basic white cabinets that come with the house when you do no upgrades. The cabinets were of low quality. And I did send some type of pictures. Unfortunately, my printer didn't work, broke down on me, and I couldn't print out my stuff. But I did send the assessor some pictures of some of the quality in the cabinets. And it's hard because I know that it's like 10 years after the fact that these problems were occurred within the first year of when I bought the house. And you spend so much money in buying such a very expensive house thinking you're going to get a good deal. And there was just so many major issues. And I feel that the board should consider the $140,000 that the bankruptcy approved as the damages in the house or the defects in the house. Just because they didn't have the money in bankruptcy to pay it off. If they would have had the money and they wouldn't have went to bankruptcy, it would have been $140,000. A lot of these houses that probably sold in that time frame, they probably fixed the problem. They probably upgraded, and you can't tell. A lot of my stuff is still there. I mean, the electrical issues are still there. The fact that the insulation isn't inadequate is still there. I mean, there's a lot of, like I say, issues that haven't been resolved that if I sold my house, it wouldn't be at that $570,000 mark, and that's what I believe. I wish I would have seen one of your presentations. I saw today the case that went on before me so that I know how to prepare myself. I wouldn't even have had any clue how to prepare myself. But I just want to leave this behind. I just need help. And whatever is, I just want there to be justice and something reasonable, and I don't know, I know there's no workman's comp, lemon law in this stuff, but, we're sold a lemon in that time. And if you want to see the whole bankruptcy paperwork, it's here that I have. And some houses were minimum. They only got awarded $800, which means that their defects were very low. So you can't compare that the whole tract that had issues had the same issues, because they all had different issues. Some had lesser issues than others. And when I look at all this list, it's a big, thick book of the bankruptcy. I think a couple of houses had the highest, which was mine, and a couple others, which had the majority of defects in the homes. So this is why I'm addressing this, and this is why I'm here. So I guess that's all I can say from my part. That my home is one of the ones that had the major defects. Even though you have another house that's the same exact model as mine, that house probably didn't have the defects that my house had. And this bankruptcy thing proves it, because some of them were awarded $800, $500. Mine was awarded the $4,000, $2,000 was taken by the attorney. I got the other $2,000.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other information?
No, I think that's all I can say.
Okay. We'll start with the assessor. Are there any questions to the applicant?
The first question is, how did you come up with, or how was the $140,189.41 for the allowed claim amount determined?
I determined it considering all the defects in my home and what I was hearing at that time other houses were selling from. Unfortunately, my computer broke down, and the one comparable that I had disappeared with my computer when it went down, and that's how I got to it. And even though I think it was a little bit on the higher side of taking out the $140,000 and looking at everything else, I just said, you know what, I think this would be reasonable, but that's how I got to it.
And when was the lawsuit filed?
It was right after the house was bought. I think it was a year after the house was bought.
Have you done any repairs to date?
Not inside the home.
Okay. Have you gotten any estimates from contractors for cost to cure?
No. We were barely trying to survive making the house payment. I had a modification in 2010 because I was going to lose my home. So there's no room for me to make these major repairs. And due to the amount that I just got last year, was just $2,000 on $140,000, defects. It's really not much that I could have done. I did do some kind of the trash compactor is still doesn't work from the first year I bought the house. That hasn't been fixed, but the microwave, because it's something that we needed to use on a daily basis, that was replaced. But the dishwasher, the trash compactor, that hasn't been replaced. It's still the way I got it, and it, like I said, misfunctioned the first year that we had the home.
So you're saying that you reinvested the $2,000 that you got in settlement into the house?
No.
No.
I'm
Okay.
saying that in the previous years, that in the next following year after I purchased the house, I had to redo the microwave because that's something that I needed.
And the one comparable that you were going to use was on the computer, and that comparable was from approximately 2005, and that's the one that you used to establish the,
No.
No.
No, it was from 2015.
oh, okay. All right. No further questions from the assessor.
Okay. Any questions from the board to the applicant?
I'm still a little confused. How did you arrive at that 140,000?
Based on the defects that, when I went through the bankruptcy, I had previous information from them, from the packets that they sent me of the defects on the home, which is 140,000. And even when I had that 140,000, that was some of the information that I submitted with the paperwork I gave you. There was other stuff that wasn't added on, but I just stopped doing it because I was informed by the attorney that I had hired at the time that there was a bankruptcy case and that they were not going to take on the case. So when the bankruptcy case came on, I was never informed by that attorney that, okay, there's some money here, is there anything else that we need to add, or do we need to talk or anything? Or I would have added the other stuff that wasn't on there already. So there is more damage than what's on the paperwork, but that's how I just stayed with the 140,000.
So you were given a list of items and like the cabinets are bad and some contractors made an estimate as $4,000 to replace those cabinets? Or?
No, there was never, what I did was the attorneys at that time gave me some paperwork, and I think I submitted it, where they're asking, tell us everything that's going on with the home, and I submitted it to them. And based on that fact, when it went to bankruptcy, they came up with the amount of 140,000. And from that 140,000, because there was not enough money in the books to pay everybody off, because there's a lot of homeowners, they allowed me $4,000 on the defects. And then 2,000 went to me, 2,000 went to the attorney.
Okay, so the 140, that was an attorney-derived figure based on this check?
Based on my, yeah.
Checklist?
Mhm.
So you checked off, said, hey, this was going on, and they said, oh, because of this checklist,
Mhm.
it's 140,000.
Right. And that's what the bankruptcy court case accepted.
Right, okay. So you know that you can get contractor estimates for free, right? I mean, you can have contractors come to your house and just to tell you how much stuff costs to fix, and you can get written estimates from them.
Yeah, I probably didn't even think about all this stuff because I was, to me, it was like, you know what, it's already bankruptcy.
Sure.
You're not going to get more than what they're going to do, whatever it is.
Right,
That was just my thinking, you know, that there's nothing that could be done more.
Right.
So,
It's just from our point of view, we're trying to quantify, you know, your problems, and it sounds like.
well, I thought from you guys, I had to do an appraisal, and I can't afford an appraisal.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, I thought I didn't know that I could just have a contractor come in and say, how would it cost to fix all this stuff? I didn't do that. I just thought that with you guys, it would be I have to pay for an appraisal, and I don't have that kind of money.
Right, okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Crowe, do you have any questions? I just had one question, Ms. Oros. From looking at the three comps on the assessor's worksheet, one on Opalo, one on Luster, and one on Sombra, do any of those three appear on your list in your exhibit in terms of the amount of damages or of a claim that they may have had related to the issue?
I could look it up. You know what, it would be hard to find because it goes by owner name.
Right.
But if it was, it'd probably be in this paperwork, but I'd have to look one by one, and it's
Okay.
a lot of paperwork. They could be on there, I don't know.
Okay.
But it's whoever filed and whoever didn't file.
Right. Okay. Just curious if you might know.
Yeah, no,
from
I
looking.
don't know off of, I wasn't aware of these addresses until today here. I didn't know, I didn't have any of this information prior to our hearing. So I didn't know what they were comparing it to, or I didn't even know if I was, was supposed to have access to this stuff prior to today.
Okay.
And how much did you buy your property for?
$759,000.
$759? Okay.
Just one quick question for the assessor. Mr. Denham, you had commented earlier today that you try to share the information before the hearings with the applicants. Was that the case this time?
Yes, and also, according to our records, the home sold March 6, 2009 for $739,150. I did, and you may have forgotten, I did ask you if there had been any contractors through the process, and you told me no. And that's one reason that I wanted to view the home.
Okay. I think I was just referring more to your comps, because you had mentioned a lot of times that you share that info ahead of time.
Actually, I'm going to say no until today.
Okay.
So to the applicant, you bought in 2009 or 2006?
I bought it in 2006.
Okay. So it says here 2009. Is that an error?
Yes. It should be 2006.
2006.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry, just so we're all on the same page, is your,
right there.
Mr. Curtis is looking at the Assessor's Exhibit A1.
Okay.
Page 2.
And then to the applicant, you believe it's 759 that you bought it for, or 739?
I thought it was like 759 or 750. Like I said, I did have brain surgery, and one of my issues is, I forget, I can't remember that back in advance.
So it's in the sevens.
But it's in, yeah, it was some, probably, he's probably right if that's what he has, but I remember it was like 750,000.
Oh, right. Always seems higher than what you paid.
Well, also, sometimes the closing costs in escrow, we look at actual sale price.
Okay. Any other questions from the board to the applicant?
I have none.
Okay, so then we'll take some time, Ms. Aros, if you'd like to make any final comments or a summary of anything.
And what I want to let you guys know is that I'm not here to fight, it has to be down to the 460,000 that I think is what it should be, but whatever you guys feel is fair and justice is going to be good enough for me.
Okay, thank you. And to the assessor?
The assessor put together 3 comps within the subject's neighborhood, made adjustments based on information available to us, and including a deduction for the settlement purposes. Unfortunately, we weren't able to view the inside of the property, which may have given us more insight. But again, based on the information we have, this is the number we've derived. Thank you.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
When he wanted us to view the property, and I'm a county worker, I know we have timeframes to meet and things to get done. My respect to Rick, he was trying to work with me, I know, but he did tell me the day before, can I go out tomorrow? And I have like a custody with my granddaughter going out in Visalia, and I had to go out to Visalia the next day, and I say, I'm not available tomorrow because I had to go up to Visalia, but just want to let you know that that's the reason. I wasn't refusing to let him, we could have arranged another date, but he said he wasn't going to be available any other date but the next day. And I think we were speaking like in the afternoon, around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm like, well, tomorrow is not a day that I could do this. And I could have been available any other day, but just want to let you know.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the assessor?
No further comments.
Okay. So we'll close the hearing to public testimony. And again, unless there's any objection, we can handle our deliberations now. And so let's do that. Any comments from the board?
Well, unfortunately, the applicant has not presented any evidence to refute what the assessors presented, so I would rule in favor of the assessor. I would also advise the applicant to appeal for next year and have the assessor come out and check the house over.
Okay. I just want to make sure that everyone could hear Mr. Crow's comments in terms of, okay.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Mr. Crow. It's, I think the applicant should shoot for an appeal next year with an inspection from the assessor and maybe, a breakdown of contractor quotes, just so we have numbers to work from. It gives us more of a ballpark to be able to possibly lower the value in the future.
Okay, and I don't think I have anything to add to those comments, and so we'll ask if there is a motion.
Before the board makes a motion, I'll just remind the board that the assessor is recommending a reduction, and so I've put the assessor's proposed reduction on your screens if the person that wants to make the motion wants to.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to reduce the enrolled value to $575,000, allocated $374,000 to land, and $201,000 to improvement value for the January 1st, 2015 date evaluation.
I second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis and seconded by Mr. Crow, and the motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Aros, for your time. And good luck to you, and thank you to the assessor for presentation.
As Mr. Curtis said, that you can get a contractor to come out and give you an estimate without any cost, so
Okay.
it would be a good idea for.
I'll do that. I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay. We've gone through the stipulations, so I don't believe we have any other active items unless, Mr. Vlahakis, you know of any on the agenda?
Nope, I believe the agenda is complete, and you're free to call adjournment.
Okay, so we are adjourned at 1:20. Thank you for everyone for pushing through to this time to get everything done.